Story 1. My name is Vera, and I never thought I'd physically drag my own sister out of my house while 25 kids watched. But here we are. Look, before you judge me, let me explain what happened at my daughter's 8th birthday party 3 weeks ago. I'd been planning this party for months. My daughter had become obsessed with pineapples after watching some cartoon. So naturally, she wanted a pineapple-themed party. I went all out. Pineapple balloons, tropical decorations, and I even ordered a custom 3-tier pineapple cake from a specialty bakery for $280. Yes, I know that's ridiculous. My husband told me I was being extra, but my kid deserved something special. The party was set for 2 p.m. I had the whole class invited, plus neighborhood kids. I rented a bounce house, hired a face painter, the works. Everything was perfect. My sister was supposed to arrive at 1:30 to help set up. She's got a 6-year-old son who's challenging. That's the polite way to say he's the most spoiled kid I've ever met. But I'm trying not to be completely harsh here. She's a single mom, and I think she overcompensates by giving him everything he wants. 1:30 came and went. 2 o'clock arrived. No sister. Kids started showing up, and I was running around solo because my husband's not exactly party planning material. By 2:15, I'd called her 3 times with no answer. She finally showed up at 2:45, 45 minutes late. No apology. She just walked in with her son trailing behind, looking like someone canceled Christmas. I should have known something was wrong right then. I was organizing a game when I heard my daughter scream. Not a fun scream, but a genuine cry of distress. I ran to the kitchen and there was my sister, holding my beautiful 3-tier pineapple cake over the trash can. "What are you doing?" I yelled. She looked at me with this blank expression. "He doesn't like pineapple. He wants chocolate." I stared at her. "What? My son doesn't like pineapple. You should have asked what he wanted. I need money to go buy a chocolate cake right now." Before I could process what was happening, she dropped it. She just dropped the entire cake into the trash. It hit the bottom with this horrible splat. Frosting exploded everywhere, the floor, cabinets, even the window. My daughter burst into tears, full body sobbing. Her friends stood frozen with their mouths open. I looked at my sister and felt something inside me snap. Not just anger, but years of accumulated resentment breaking through like a dam giving way. "Get out," I said. My voice was shaking. "Don't be so dramatic." She rolled her eyes. "It's just a cake. Give me $200 and I'll get a proper one." That's when I grabbed her arm and started dragging her toward the door. She fought me, trying to pull away, but I didn't care. I was stronger than I thought. Her son was following us, wailing at the top of his lungs. I got her onto the front porch, and that's when I let everything out. 31 years of being invisible, of watching her get everything while I got nothing. I told her she was selfish, that she was raising a spoiled brat, and that she was a terrible mother. She tried to slap me. I caught her wrist and shoved her. She fell on the lawn, and that's when my parents pulled up. Before I get to what my parents said, I need to explain our history because otherwise you'll think I'm just someone who attacks family over cake. And while, yes, I did attack my family over cake, there's decades of context here. Growing up, my sister was the golden child. I'm not exaggerating. She literally could do no wrong. I was 3 years older, and from the moment she was born, I basically ceased to exist in my parents' eyes. When I was 12, I saved 6 months of allowance to buy a pet rabbit. I did research, prepared a habitat, and was so responsible. I named him Peanut and loved that rabbit more than anything. 3 months later, my sister decided she wanted to hang out in my room more because it had better light. Turned out she was allergic to rabbit fur. Not deathly allergic, just sniffly. My parents gave away my rabbit while I was at school. They donated him to some family across town. When I came home crying, my mom said I was being selfish and that family comes first. That was the pattern over and over. My sister wanted something, my sister got it, regardless of what it cost me. When I was 15, I was supposed to have a quinceañera. My mom's Mexican and it was a huge deal. We'd been planning for over a year. My parents had saved $5,000. 2 weeks before the party, my sister threw a fit because she wanted to go on a school trip to Europe. The trip cost $4,000. My quince got canceled. They used my party money for her trip and told me we'd celebrate small with family. We went to a chain restaurant. They brought out a cupcake with a candle. My sister posted pictures from Paris while I cried in my room. The worst part wasn't the big stuff. It was being invisible. When I made honor roll every semester, they'd say good job and move on. When my sister got a B instead of her usual C, they'd take her out for ice cream and post about being proud. When I won a regional science fair, my parents couldn't attend because they had to watch my sister's middle school play where she was background townsperson number 3. I got into college on a partial scholarship. I worked my ass off with a part-time job and student loans to cover the rest. My sister barely graduated high school, didn't go to college, and moved back home where my parents supported her for years. Did they ever offer to help with my loans? What do you think? When she got pregnant at 22, my parents practically threw a parade. Never mind the guy disappeared. Never mind she had no job, no plan. They converted their guest room into a nursery. When I got pregnant 2 years later, married, financially stable with a career, my mom said, "Oh, that's nice. Will this interfere with you babysitting your sister's son? I love my nephew. I do. But he's been raised with zero boundaries and it shows. Every time I'm around him, it's a nightmare. He destroys things, hits other kids, and screams when he doesn't get his way. My sister thinks discipline is cruel. She's raising a miniature version of herself. I've tried talking to my parents. They tell me I'm judgmental, that I need to be understanding, that my sister had a hard path and needs support. What about my hard path? So, when I grabbed my sister's arm at that party, it wasn't about a cake. It was about 31 years of being treated like my feelings didn't matter. It was about watching my daughter's face crumple the same way mine had crumpled dozens of times. It was about being done. Finally, completely done. So, there I was on my front lawn with my sister sprawled on the grass, her son screaming, and my parents pulling into the driveway. Perfect timing. The universe has a sick sense of humor. My dad jumped out. "What's going on? Why is your sister on the ground? Ask her why she threw my daughter's birthday cake in the trash," I said, pointing at my sister. My mom was already helping her up, brushing grass off her pants, asking if she was okay. My sister immediately started crying. Not angry crying, but this pathetic, wounded crying. "She attacked me. She dragged me out of the house and pushed me down. Is this true?" My dad looked at me with that expression of disappointment I'd seen a million times growing up. "She destroyed my daughter's birthday cake because her son doesn't like pineapple." "It was just a cake," my mom said. "Did you really need to get violent over a cake?" Just a cake. Those 3 words made everything click. Nothing had changed. Nothing would ever change. "Get off my property," I said. "All of you, right now. We're not going anywhere until you apologize to your sister," my dad said. "Apologize?" She showed up late, threw away $300 worth of cake, demanded I pay for a replacement, and you want me to apologize? "You pushed her down," my mom said. "She tried to slap me first. I was defending myself." Party guests were definitely watching through the windows now. Some had come outside. This was a full-blown spectacle, and I didn't care anymore. "You've always been jealous of her," my sister said through her tears. "Always. You can't stand that people actually like me." I laughed, came out harsh and bitter. "People like you? You can't keep a job. You can't keep friends. You're a 33-year-old woman living off our parents because you've never faced a single consequence for anything you've done." "That's enough," my dad said, his voice rising. "Your sister is going through a difficult time. She's always going through a difficult time. That's her entire personality, and you two enable it constantly." "We support our children," my mom said. "Both of you equally." Equally. I felt something break inside me. "You missed my high school graduation to take her shopping. You missed my college graduation because she had a headache. You've given her thousands of dollars and never offered me a cent. Where's the equality?" My sister was crying harder now. "See? She's attacking me again. She's always attacking me." "I'm stating facts," I said. Facts you all refuse to acknowledge because it's easier to pretend everything's fine than admit you raised a narcissist. My dad stepped forward. You need to apologize to your sister right now or we're done. You'll be choosing to cut yourself off from this family. I looked at my parents, at my sister behind them with her crocodile tears, at the life I'd spent 3 decades trying to fit into, trying to earn love from people who'd never really seen me. Then we're done, I said. Get off my property or I'm calling the police. They left. I went back inside where my husband had ordered pizza and somehow salvaged the party. My daughter had an okay time eventually. But that night, after everyone was gone and she was finally asleep, I sat in my kitchen looking at cake chunks still stuck to my walls and realized my family was never going to change. The only thing I could change was whether I kept letting them hurt me. That's when my phone buzzed with a notification. My sister had posted a video on social media, and suddenly things got so much worse. The video my sister posted showed me dragging her through my house and shoving her on the lawn. But it started right when I grabbed her. No context, no cake in the trash, no her demanding money. Just me looking like an absolute psycho attacking my innocent sister. The caption read, "I can't believe my own sister physically assaulted me at her daughter's birthday party. She dragged me out in front of all those children and pushed me down. I'm shaking and my son is traumatized. Should I press charges? I never thought she would treat me this way." The comments were already rolling in, hundreds of them. "Oh my God, what a psycho. That's abuse. Definitely press charges. Those poor children witnessing violence. Someone should check on that kid." My hands shook as I scrolled. There were already shares, lots of them. People I didn't know were commenting about what a terrible person I was. I tried commenting to explain, but she'd blocked me. Can't have my side interfering with her victim narrative. I texted her, "Take down that video. You know that's not what happened. You threw my daughter's cake in the trash and demanded money. You're leaving out the entire story. Nothing. My husband found me at midnight, still scrolling. You need to stop looking at that. She's making me look like a monster. Everyone thinks I attacked her for no reason. Everyone who matters knows the truth." But that was the thing. Most people at the party were kids. The parents who were there, I didn't have their contact info. No way to reach them for backup. By morning, 10,000 views. 10,000 people who thought I was abusive. I spent that morning documenting everything. Photos of cake remains in my trash. Photos of splatter on my walls. Screenshots of messages confirming party time. Doorbell footage showing her arriving 45 minutes late. I made my own post with all the evidence explaining what actually happened. I kept my daughter's face out of it, but made sure people understood this wasn't random violence. This was consequences for destroying something special for a child. The response was mixed. Some supportive comments. Others accused me of making up stories to cover abuse. The worst said, even if she did throw away the cake, that didn't justify violence. And they weren't entirely wrong. I know I shouldn't have grabbed her. I know. But with my daughter crying and my sister acting entitled, something broke. My sister's response. Now she's making up stories to justify her violence. Classic abuser behavior. Attack someone, then blame them for making you do it. I'm honestly scared for her family. The internet ate it up. People were choosing sides. My husband's friends were messaging him. My coworkers saw it. My boss saw it. I got pulled into an HR meeting about my home situation. Humiliating doesn't even cover it. 3 days of nonstop comments, shares, and arguments between strangers. I'd posted doorbell footage showing her arriving late. She'd posted screenshots of old texts claiming they showed my pattern of hostility. The texts were things like, "Can you give me more notice for babysitting?" And, "I can't lend you money right now." Apparently, boundaries equal hostility. Some party parents reached out privately saying they supported me. One mom commented on my sister's video backing up my story. My sister called her my flying monkey, helping me abuse her. It would have been funny if it wasn't destroying my life. Then came the family intervention. 1 week after the party, someone rang my doorbell. I looked through the peephole and saw my parents. Behind them, my aunt, uncle, 2 cousins, and my grandmother. 7 people on my porch like some intervention SWAT team. I opened the door. What's going on? We need to talk about your behavior, my dad said. I should have closed the door. But that stupid part of me that spent 31 years seeking approval let them in. They arranged themselves in my living room like a courtroom. My grandmother sat center. Everyone flanked her. My husband was upstairs with our daughter, so I faced this alone. This has gone too far, my mom started. The social media posts, the arguing, attacking your sister. I didn't attack her. She destroyed my daughter's cake and I removed her from my house. You pushed her down, my uncle said. We saw the video. She tried to slap me first. She fell when I shoved her away. Still violence, my aunt said. No excuse for family violence. I looked around. Did anyone ask her about the cake? About why I was upset? She said it was just a cake, my mom said. Even if it wasn't, your reaction was disproportionate. You need to apologize publicly. Take down your posts. Admit you overreacted. Ask forgiveness. I laughed. Actually laughed. You want me to apologize for being upset she destroyed something special for my daughter? You're acting like the victim, my dad said. But you got physical. You keep escalating online. Your sister is afraid of you. My sister is a manipulative liar who's been the golden child her entire life and can't handle someone finally standing up to her. Silence. My grandmother cleared her throat. That's enough. I didn't raise you to be cruel. Your sister has had a hard life. No, I stood up. Her life hasn't been hard. She's never faced consequences because you all enable her constantly. You know why she's a single mom? She got pregnant thinking it would make a guy stay. You know why she can't keep a job? She starts drama everywhere until she's fired. You know why her son acts out? She doesn't parent him at all. That's horrible to say about your nephew, my mom gasped. It's true, and you all know it. But keep bailing her out and making excuses while I've had to work for everything. My cousin, one I'd been close with, spoke up. I mean, she's not entirely wrong. Everyone stared. She shrugged. Come on. We all know my aunt has always babied her. We've talked about it. That's not the point, my dad said quickly. When's the last time you came to my daughter's school events? I interrupted, or asked about my job or congratulated me on anything. But when my sister needs rent money for the 4th time this year, you all pull together. Where was family solidarity when I worked full-time through college? You didn't need help, my mom said. You've always been so capable. Because I had to be, otherwise I'd have ended up like her, useless and dependent. My aunt stood. She's clearly not ready for rational conversation. Wait, another cousin said. I want to hear this. Why does she get away with everything? My grandmother sighed. Because she's not strong like you, Vera. She needs more support. There it was. Finally said out loud. I wasn't given support because I was strong enough not to need it. Get out, I said quietly. All of you. They left, arguing amongst themselves. My husband found me afterward shaking on the couch. But something had shifted. For the first time, cracks appeared in the family's unified front. After the intervention disaster, I did something probably petty. I started investigating my sister's past. Not stalking, just reaching out to people I knew she'd had conflicts with, asking what happened. I found a pattern, a very clear pattern, of her starting problems, playing victim, and walking away while everything burned. Her former roommate from 5 years ago responded to my message within an hour. Paragraphs about how my sister moved in needing a month or two, stayed 8 months without paying rent, ate her food, and used her car without asking. When confronted, she posted online about being made homeless by someone she thought was a friend. The roommate lost mutual friends before the truth came out. Her high school best friend told similar stories. Sister borrowed her car, got in an accident, and claimed the friend forced her to drive in unsafe conditions. Their whole friend group took my sister's side for months until someone discovered she'd taken the car without permission. I contacted 3 former co-workers. All said the same. Sister started jobs enthusiastic, then gradually created drama. Accused co-workers of bullying, claimed managers treated her unfairly, said she was discriminated against for being a single mom. At one job, she filed harassment complaints about an employee who'd asked her to actually work, got fired, and posted rants about toxic work culture. Most damning, her son's former daycare. I ran into the director at the supermarket. She hesitated, then spilled. My sister had been kicked out. Not her son, her. She'd linger for hours after drop-off, treating it like a co-working space. When asked to leave, she claimed they were separating her from her son, affecting her mental health. She started showing up to other kids' birthday parties uninvited. When banned, she posted scathing reviews about hostility towards single mothers. I compiled everything, screenshots, emails, statements, and organized it into a document longer than my college thesis. "What are you going to do with this?" my husband asked, finding me typing at 11 p.m. "I don't know, but I'm tired of being the only one who sees who she really is. Babe, I'm worried you're becoming obsessed." He wasn't wrong, but I felt like I was finally seeing clearly. Years of wondering if I was the problem. Too sensitive, too harsh, too judgmental, and now I had proof. She'd left a trail of burned bridges and hurt people, and every time she escaped accountability by playing the victim. I sent the document to extended family. Subject line: the pattern. Mixed responses. Some didn't respond. A few said they didn't want involvement, but several sent thoughtful replies. My cousin from the intervention wrote, "I always knew something was off. This makes sense." An aunt I barely knew. "Your uncle and I lent her over $6,000. Never paid back a cent. Your parents made us feel petty for mentioning it." Most surprisingly, my grandmother called. "I read your document. Why didn't you tell us before? Would you have believed me?" Long pause. "Probably not. Your sister has always been good at explaining things to look innocent." "That's called lying, Grandma." Another pause. "I need to think. But Vera, I'm sorry we made you feel invisible. That wasn't fair." Not the full acknowledgement I wanted, but something more than I'd ever gotten. That night, I posted, "I've learned about family patterns this week, about how dysfunction perpetuates because people prefer the status quo over confronting uncomfortable truths. I'm done being comfortable, done being silent, done apologizing for boundaries." My sister's response came fast. "I'm done being abused by someone who's supposed to love me." Comments turned into a battlefield. But this time, something different happened. People who knew her started commenting with their own stories. Nothing detailed, just vague references to similar experiences, and I've seen this pattern. The tide was turning. Slowly, painfully, but turning. Then karma came for my sister through her own son's behavior. 2 weeks after my daughter's disaster party, karma hit my sister through her son. And look, I feel guilty saying that because he's just a kid and none of this is his fault. But what happened was both vindicating and horrifying. My nephew attends private school. My parents pay because public school wasn't good enough. They had a spring fair with games and food trucks. I heard about it from a friend whose son is in his grade. According to multiple witnesses and eventually local news because, yes, it made the news, my nephew completely lost it. There was some ring toss game where you win prizes. He didn't win. The prize he wanted was a stuffed animal. And when he didn't get it, he started screaming. Not crying, screaming. Full volume, red-faced, veins popping, screaming. My sister demanded the volunteer running the game just give him the prize because he's having a hard day. When the volunteer said, "No, that's not how games work," my nephew grabbed the prize and ran. The volunteer followed to get it back. My sister got in her face, yelling about discrimination against single mothers and kids from difficult backgrounds. His background is spoiled rotten, but sure. Other kids saw him take the prize and started chanting, "Cheater! Cheater!" My nephew responded by picking up a plastic baseball bat from the games area and hitting a kid. Hard enough the kid needed an ice pack and parents were called. When a teacher tried taking the bat, my nephew bit her. Bit her hand hard enough to break skin. School security got involved. They took him to the principal's office while my sister followed screaming about lawsuits and discrimination. The whole thing got captured on multiple phones. By evening, it was all over local social media. My friend sent me a link. Isn't this your nephew? I watched it 3 times. It was worse than I imagined. You could see his face red and contorted with rage, completely out of control. My sister wasn't calming him, but defending his behavior and blaming everyone else. You could hear her screaming, "He has special needs. You're all ableist." For the record, he doesn't have special needs. He's never been diagnosed. He's just never been taught that actions have consequences. The video got hundreds of comments. People were appalled. General consensus: child needs help, mother is failing him. Several people who'd seen my sister's posts about me pointed out the irony. Here she was calling me abusive while her son literally hit other children. The school called an emergency meeting. Suspension for a week. Required psychological evaluation before return. Permanently banned from school events unless directly supervised. My sister went nuclear. She posted a long rant about targeting her son, trying to label him trouble to justify ableist policies, and considering legal action. She set up a fundraiser for legal fees to fight educational discrimination. The fundraiser raised $73. Her previous "I was assaulted" fundraiser had raised nearly $2,000. The tide was definitely turning. My parents called me for the first time since the intervention. "Did you see what happened to your nephew?" "I did. He's going through tough times. Your sister needs support, not judgment." "Mom, he attacked another child and bit a teacher." "That's not tough times. That's serious behavioral problems needing professional help." "Well, if you hadn't traumatized him by attacking his mother." "I'm hanging up now." And I did. I actually hung up on my mother. Terrifying and liberating. That night, I got a message from an unknown number. It was the teacher my nephew bit. She'd found my social media somehow. "I saw your posts about your sister. I wanted you to know I believe you. I've been teaching 15 years and dealt with difficult parents. But your sister is something else. Her son desperately needs help and she refuses to see it. You're not crazy. You're not abusive. You're the only one in that family who sees reality clearly." I stared at that message for a long time. Validation from a stranger shouldn't have meant so much. But it did. It really did. And things were about to get much worse. 3 days after the school incident, things escalated. It was 2:17 in the morning. I know the exact time because I checked my phone when someone started pounding on my door. Not knocking, pounding like trying to break it down. My husband shot up. "What the hell?" I grabbed my phone and pulled up the doorbell camera. My sister was on our porch, clearly drunk. Stumbling, hair a mess, mascara running. Hitting the door with both fists, yelling something I couldn't make out. "It's my sister. She's drunk. I'm calling the police," my husband said, reaching for his phone. "Wait." Some stupid, ingrained sense that you don't call cops on family took over. I pulled up the two-way audio. "What do you want?" Her face appeared close to the camera, distorted and wild-eyed. "I want to talk like adults. Let me in. You're drunk. Go home." "I'm not drunk. I had 2 drinks. Stop making me seem crazy." She definitely wasn't slurring badly, but her eyes were unfocused, her movements exaggerated. Whether it was 2 drinks or 10, she was in no condition for a productive conversation. "Go home or I'm calling the police." "Call them. Call them so they can see how you abuse me. How you've turned everyone against me." She kicked the door. She actually kicked it hard enough I heard something crack. My husband was already on with emergency services. I switched the camera to record. My sister completely lost it, screaming about how I'd ruined her life, poisoned the family against her, that I was terrible and had always been jealous. She kicked the door twice more, leaving scuff marks and cracks. Then she noticed the camera, got right up close, and yelled at the lens. "You think you're so perfect? You're not. You're an expletive, and everyone knows it. Your daughter's going to grow up hating you." That one hurt, really hurt. My daughter appeared in our doorway. "Mommy, what's that noise?" "It's nothing, sweetie. Go back to bed." "Is that Auntie?" I hesitated. "Yes, but she's leaving soon. Go back to your room." My husband guided her out while I watched the camera. My sister had moved to our window trying to look inside. When that didn't work, she picked up a decorative rock from the landscaping. For a horrible second, I thought she'd throw it through the window. She just held it, swaying. Police arrived 7 minutes after the call. I watched through the camera as they pulled up, lights flashing. My sister immediately dropped the rock and started crying. Not angry crying, but pitiful victim crying. Thank God you're here. My sister locked me out and I just wanted to talk. I think she's having a mental health crisis. I'm worried about my niece. Couldn't believe it. I opened the door and stepped out. 2 officers stood with my sister. Are you the homeowner? The male officer asked. Yes, she's my sister. She showed up drunk at 2 a.m. attacking my door. I'm not drunk. I had 2 glasses of wine hours ago. She's lying because she hates me. Ma'am, have you been drinking? The female officer asked. I told you, just 2 glasses. I need you to take a breathalyzer. My sister's face cycled through anger, panic, and calculation. I don't have to. I'm not driving. You're on someone's property at 2 a.m. damaging their door after they called about your behavior. Take the test voluntarily or we take you in for public intoxication and trespassing. She looked at me with pure hatred. This is what you wanted, to humiliate me. I wanted to sleep without being terrorized, I said. She failed the BAC, .13, well over the legal driving limit. Officers arrested her for public intoxication, trespassing, and vandalism. They asked if I wanted to file additional charges. I said yes to everything. As they put her in the car, she screamed about false arrest and brutality. The female officer gave me her card. You should get a restraining order. This isn't normal sibling conflict. This is escalating harassment. After they left, my husband and I stood looking at the damaged door. Scuff marks, cracks in the wood. The doorbell camera had captured everything. We're getting that restraining order, he said. Not a question. Yeah, we are. My mother bailed my sister out by 6 a.m. I found out she'd posted bail and brought her to their house where she was recovering from the trauma of being arrested. The trauma she brought entirely on herself, but facts have never been my family's strong suit. I filed for the restraining order, submitted video evidence, neighbor statements, and a court date was set for 2 weeks out. I tried to just live my life, work, take care of my daughter, pretend everything was normal. It worked for exactly 4 days. I was at my office, medical billing, thrilling stuff, when the receptionist called. Vera, your parents are here. They say they'll wait. My stomach dropped. Of course, they'd come to my workplace. Nothing was sacred. I should have stayed in my cubicle. I should have called security. Instead, I walked out. My parents stood with identical expressions of disappointment and determination. We need to talk, my father said. Not here. This is my workplace. Then you should have answered our calls, my mother said. I'd blocked their numbers 2 days ago. I didn't mention that. Come outside. The parking lot was 92 degrees and humid. Missouri late spring is basically a swamp. I was sweating through my blouse immediately. My parents didn't notice the heat. They were too focused on their mission. You need to drop this restraining order, my dad started. It's not nonsense. She showed up drunk at 2 a.m. and damaged my property. She was upset. She made a mistake. That's what family does. Forgive mistakes. A mistake is forgetting a birthday. Showing up drunk at 2 o'clock in the morning attacking someone's door is assault and vandalism. You're being dramatic, my mother said, as usual. You know what this is doing to her? She's devastated. She's talking about... She paused, lowering her voice. Hurting herself. The nuclear option. The thing my sister always threatened when she wasn't getting her way. I'd heard variations of it my whole life. Emotional manipulation 101. If she's genuinely suicidal, she needs to be hospitalized and getting professional help, not living with you while you enable her. We are not enabling, my father snapped. We're supporting her through difficult times. You've been supporting her through difficult times for 33 years. When does it end? Coworkers were walking past, definitely listening. This would be all over the office tomorrow. "You're destroying this family," my mother said, tears welling. "We used to be close. Now you're tearing us apart over what? A cake?" Online arguments. She threw away my daughter's birthday cake, then showed up at 2 a.m. "How is this my fault?" "Because you won't forgive. You hold grudges. You've always been like this. So rigid, so unforgiving. I wonder why. Maybe growing up invisible while you worshipped her." My father stepped forward. "That's not fair. We've always treated you equally." I laughed, harsh and bitter. "Dad, you missed my high school graduation to take her shopping. You missed my college graduation because she had a headache. You've lent her tens of thousands and never given me a cent equal. She needed help more." "No, she demanded help more. There's a difference." Impasse. Parking lot standoff. My mother was crying, and my father looked like he wanted to hit something. I just felt tired. That's when my mom said it. "We can't afford this. If you pursue the restraining order, your sister needs therapy. Maybe a lawyer. We're stretched thin with her rent, school tuition, bills." "Wait, you're still paying her rent?" They exchanged looks. "She lost her job last month. The school thing made it impossible. We've been helping temporarily." "How much per month?" Another look. "Not your business," my mother said. "How much?" "About 3,000, my father admitted. "Rent, bills, groceries, tuition. $3,000 a month. For how long?" 8 months. "But it's temporary." "It's always temporary." 33 years of temporary. Then I understood the real reason they were here. You can't afford legal fees if you keep supporting her. That's what this is. You're broke from enabling her and need me to back off. My father's face told me everything. "We thought you could help. Contribute," my mother said carefully. "She's really struggling and you have a good job. Get out of my parking lot." They left. I went to HR and requested a note barring them from the building. That evening, I got an email from my mother. Subject: "Please read." It was a long email about family values, forgiveness, and Christian charity. Attached was a spreadsheet showing money given to my sister over 3 years. $68,000 in 3 years. And they'd never offered me a cent. The restraining order hearing was Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. I'd hired a lawyer, nothing fancy, just competent family law. He reviewed my evidence and called it a slam dunk, which should have been comforting but just made me nervous. I dressed professionally, took the day off, and met my lawyer at 8:30. My husband came for moral support. We sat in the waiting area, and I kept checking my phone with nowhere to message, just nervous energy. At 8:50, my sister arrived with my parents and a lawyer of her own. Of course, she had a lawyer. My parents must have maxed out credit cards or taken a loan, all to defend her right to harass me at 2 a.m. She looked rough. I'm not saying that out of pettiness. She genuinely looked unwell. Dark circles, hair in a messy ponytail, a dress that looked grabbed from the back of her closet. Her lawyer, in contrast, looked extremely professional. Expensive suit, designer briefcase. Where'd they find money for this? We didn't make eye contact. My parents shot me looks that were half anger, half desperation. I ignored them. At 9 o'clock exactly, we were called into the courtroom. The judge was a woman in her 50s who looked like she'd heard too many ridiculous cases already and wasn't in the mood for nonsense. My lawyer went first and presented the doorbell footage, the police report, photos of the door damage, and neighbor statements. Calm, factual, professional. The footage was particularly damning. A clear view of her face, every word she screamed, watching her kick the door repeatedly. Then it was my sister's lawyer's turn. He started with a narrative about a struggling single mother systematically isolated from family by my pattern of abuse. He showed the video of me dragging her out at the birthday party. He had printouts of my heated social media posts. He made it sound like I was running a harassment campaign against a vulnerable woman. The judge looked bored through most of it, then asked, "Counselor, does your client deny showing up at plaintiff's home at 2:17 a.m.? My client admits she went to her sister's home, Your Honor, but maintains she wasn't intoxicated and only wanted to talk. The police report indicates she failed a breathalyzer at .13. Are you disputing the test accuracy? The lawyer paused. No, Your Honor, but… So she was legally intoxicated on someone else's property at 2 a.m., causing a disturbance resulting in property damage requiring police intervention. Correct. The context of their relationship. I'm asking yes or no questions. Counselor, was she or was she not intoxicated on plaintiff's property at 2 a.m.? Yes, Your Honor. The judge turned to my sister. Do you have anything to say? My sister stood. Her lawyer tried stopping her, but she was already talking. Your Honor, my sister's been abusing me for years, turned my whole family against me, attacked me at her daughter's party, and now she's using the legal system to continue harassment. I went that night desperate to make her understand how much she's hurting me. Yes, I'd been drinking, but I have anxiety and was self-medicating. Ma'am, the judge interrupted. Self-medicating with alcohol, then showing up at someone's home at 2 a.m. isn't a defense. It's evidence you need help. I do need help, because my sister is destroying my life. The judge looked at her for a long moment, then at me. Do you have anything to add? I stood. My lawyer had advised staying quiet, but I needed to say this. Your Honor, my sister has never faced consequences in her entire life. Every time she does something harmful, my family makes excuses. They tell her she's the victim. They enable her to keep behaving this way. I'm not trying to destroy her life. I'm trying to protect mine and my daughter's. We deserve to feel safe in our home. The judge nodded slowly. I'm ordering a psychological evaluation before a final ruling. Respondent will undergo evaluation within 30 days. Court appointed. Meanwhile, I'm issuing a temporary restraining order. Respondent stays at least 200 meters from plaintiff, her home, workplace, and daughter's school. No contact through social media, phone, email, or third parties. Effective immediately until we reconvene after the evaluation. My sister started crying. This isn't fair. You're not listening. Ma'am, I watched you kick someone's door while screaming profanities at 2 a.m. I reviewed a police report showing you highly intoxicated. I've seen the damage you caused. There isn't another side. Those are facts. The evaluation will determine if underlying mental health issues need addressing. But regardless, this order is necessary for everyone's safety. She sobbed. My mother rushed over. My father looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. Anger, yes, but also maybe resignation. Outside, my lawyer shook my hand. A psychological evaluation is great for your case. If she's diagnosed, and based on what I saw, she probably will be, it strengthens the permanent restraining order. My husband and I walked to our car in silence. Once inside, I just sat there, hands on the steering wheel. How do you feel? Relieved, and sad, and guilty, and angry all at once. That's probably normal. Is it though? Is any of this normal? He squeezed my shoulder. We drove home and I slept 14 hours straight. The psychological evaluation took 3 weeks. I lived in a weird limbo, waiting for the other shoe to drop while trying to exist normally. The restraining order meant no contact with my sister or parents, which was both terrifying and liberating. My daughter noticed immediately. How come Grandma and Grandpa haven't visited? My husband and I had discussed this and agreed on age-appropriate honesty. They need time to work through some grown-up problems. It doesn't have anything to do with you. They still love you very much. Did they though? I wasn't sure anymore. They loved the idea of her, maybe, but had they ever actually shown up? They'd missed her last 2 birthday parties. One helping my sister move, another because my nephew had a cold. They never came to a single school event. They saw her maybe 6 times last year. The restraining order was clarifying. It forced me to see how little they'd actually been present. It forced me to realize I'd been doing all the emotional labor, maintaining relationships with people who didn't prioritize me or my daughter. 3 weeks later, I got a call from my lawyer. Evaluation complete. The judge wanted to reconvene in 2 days. Do you know what it said? Not details, but they're recommending continued intervention. Usually not great news for a respondent. The second hearing was less dramatic. My sister showed up more put together, but defeated. Her expensive lawyer wasn't there. My parents had run out of money. She had help from a public defender. The judge reviewed the evaluation results. I couldn't see the report but watched her face as she read. Lots of nodding, some frowning. Finally, she looked up. The court-appointed psychologist diagnosed the respondent with narcissistic personality disorder with dependent features. The evaluation notes a consistent pattern of manipulation, lack of empathy, and inability to accept responsibility. The psychologist recommends intensive therapy and has concerns about parenting capacity. My sister stood. I'm not. This is my sister's fault. She's the one. Ma'am, sit down, the judge said, not unkindly. I understand this is difficult, but the evaluation is thorough and the diagnosis is based on extensive interviews and testing. This isn't about blame. This is recognizing you need help. I don't need help. I need my family to stop attacking me. The public defender tried getting her to sit and be quiet. She eventually did, glaring at me like I'd personally written the diagnosis. The judge continued, I'm making the restraining order permanent for 2 years. After 2 years, either party can petition to modify. I'm strongly recommending therapy, though I can't court order it for civil matters. However, she looked at my sister seriously. I'm forwarding this evaluation to the family court judge overseeing your son's school case. Given the concerns about parenting capacity, they may want their own evaluation. My sister's face went white. You can't take my son. You can't do that. I'm not taking anyone. I'm ensuring appropriate people are aware of relevant information. The restraining order is now in effect for 2 years. 200 m minimum distance. No contact. Violations result in criminal charges. Understand. My sister nodded but looked somewhere else entirely. Dissociating, maybe. I almost felt bad. Almost. Outside the courthouse, I stood in the sun and just breathed. It was over. Actually over. I had legal protection now. My family couldn't just show up anywhere. I was free. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. This is your aunt, Mom's sister. Heard about court. Want you to know I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself. Your mother is furious with me for saying this, but someone needs to tell you. You did the right thing. Your sister needed consequences for decades. Sorry we all failed you by not providing them sooner. I sat in my car and cried. Not sad tears, release. Years of tension finally leaving my body. That weekend, my husband came home with paint samples. I was thinking maybe it's time we painted the guest room. Make it something useful. A home office for you or a craft room. We keep it for when family visits. What family? He asked gently. Your parents haven't stayed over in 3 years. My parents prefer hotels. Who are we keeping it for? He was right. Maintaining a guest room for family members who never visited, never stayed, and never wanted to be part of our lives beyond the superficial was pointless. Yeah, let's paint it. Make it a reading room. Big comfy chair. Good lighting. Shelves for books I never have time for. Perfect. We painted it warm sage green, built bookshelves, and got a chair that felt like clouds. Every time I sat there with a book and tea, I felt more like myself. Like the person I might have been if I'd grown up in a family that actually saw me. My daughter started therapy, not because she was traumatized, but we wanted her to have tools I never had. The therapist said she was resilient and well-adjusted. Relief. I started therapy, too. Regular weekly sessions unpacking 33 years of dysfunction, learning I wasn't crazy or demanding or difficult, just a person who'd finally learned to have boundaries. Nearly 4 years have passed since that birthday party. My daughter just turned 12, and we threw her the party she actually wanted. Small, intimate, just her 5 best friends at an escape room followed by pizza. No stress, no drama, no family tension, just kids being kids. Sometimes she asks about my parents or my sister. I'm honest with her in age-appropriate ways. I tell her that sometimes families can't be together because it's not healthy. And that's okay. That love means protecting the people who matter most, even if that means disappointing others. My sister's life has changed. I don't follow her on social media anymore, but through the small-town grapevine and occasional family updates, I know some things. She did eventually start therapy, not because she wanted to, but because family court mandated it after investigating her parenting. My nephew stayed with her, but she has court-ordered parenting classes and regular check-ins. Last I heard, he was doing better with consistent boundaries finally in place. I hope that's true. He deserves a chance to be a normal kid. My parents tried reaching out a few times that first year, letters mostly. My moms were full of guilt trips about how I was breaking apart the family, how they were getting older, and I'd regret this when they were gone. My dads were shorter, angrier. Neither ever actually apologized or acknowledged their role in enabling my sister for decades. I kept the letters in a box in my closet, but I never responded. Then, about 18 months ago, my grandmother reached out. She called and asked if she could visit, just her. I agreed cautiously. She sat in my reading room, the one that used to be the guest room, and looked around at the bookshelves, the comfortable chair, the life I'd built without them. "I've been thinking a lot," she said, "about how we raised your mother, about the patterns that get passed down. Your mother's sister, your aunt who messaged you. She told me some things I didn't want to hear, about how we treated them differently, too. How it damages people." "It does," I said simply. "I can't fix the past, but I want to know my great-granddaughter. And I want you to know that I see you now. I see what we did. And I'm sorry. It wasn't everything, but it was something." She visits every few months now. She and my daughter bake together. She never brings up my sister or my parents unless I ask first. She respects my boundaries. My aunt, my mom's sister, has also stayed in touch. She told me that my parents are struggling financially, having drained their retirement supporting my sister. They're trying to get her to move back in with them to save on rent. The cycle continues, just in a smaller orbit that doesn't include me. I don't feel guilty about that anymore. Therapy helped. Understanding that I'm not responsible for fixing problems I didn't create. That was huge. Learning that boundaries aren't punishment, they're protection. That was everything. My marriage is stronger. My husband says I'm lighter now, less weighed down by trying to earn love from people who are never going to give it freely. My daughter is thriving. She's confident, kind, and has healthy friendships. She's never had to compete for attention or wonder if she matters. That alone makes every difficult choice worth it. I still have complicated feelings about my sister. I hope she's genuinely working on herself. I hope her son is okay. But I also know that her healing isn't my responsibility. I spent 31 years being collateral damage in her drama. I'm done with that. Sometimes I think about what I'd say to my younger self, the one who kept trying to earn her parents' approval, who wondered if she was too sensitive or too demanding. I'd tell her she wasn't the problem, that choosing herself wasn't selfish, and that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away from people who refuse to see you. The restraining order expired last year, but I renewed it for another 2 years. I'm not sure what I'll do when it does. Part of me thinks my sister won't reach out anyway. Narcissists hate being held accountable, and I became that accountability. Part of me is prepared for another round of drama if she does. But here's what I know for certain. I have a daughter who knows she's loved unconditionally. I have a husband who supports me completely. I have a home that feels peaceful. I have boundaries that protect my family. I have a life that's mine, not one dictated by dysfunctional family patterns. That 3-tier pineapple cake was expensive, but learning to value myself, that was priceless. And honestly, I'd destroy that cake myself 100 times over if it meant getting here, to this place where I'm finally free. Now on to the next story. Story 2. When my former spouse convinced the court I was emotionally unstable, my child's recording transformed everything. The instant my ex-husband gazed directly at the magistrate and declared, "She's mentally unbalanced. She fabricates stories to our daughter. I'm requesting complete guardianship," I experienced a sensation of breathlessness. He articulated it with such composure, as though stating an indisputable fact. And the magistrate, her expression suggested she accepted his claims. I attempted to vocalize something. I wanted to yell, weep, or offer some explanation, but my voice failed me. I remained immobile, pulse racing, frozen in that uncomfortable courtroom seat, while the person who once professed devotion to me characterized me as hazardous to the individual I cherish above all else, my child. Emma was seated behind me, clasping my mother's palm. Though merely 7 years old, she observed everything transpiring. Her expansive hazel eyes connected with mine. She could perceive it. She could sense it. I was metaphorically suffocating, and nobody was offering assistance. Victor, my former spouse, was attired in a dark blue business suit as if preparing for a professional presentation. Composed, polished, impeccably practiced. The identical individual who previously shouted at me in our vehicle over an incorrect takeaway order now sat before a magistrate, appearing as the embodiment of responsibility. He was engaging. He consistently had been. That constituted the difficulty. The magistrate inquired if I had any response. I parted my lips, but only a tremulous exhalation emerged. My legal representative glanced in my direction, wordless. The courtroom was utterly silent. My hands quivered. I was on the verge of losing custody of my child, and it seemed no one could discern the actual circumstances. Then I heard a voice, diminutive, lucid, and unwavering, from behind me. Your Honor, I brought a recording from Dad's mobile device. I believe you should view it. Everything halted. The gallery turned. The officer appeared bewildered. Victor's complexion drained of pigment, and for the initial time that morning, Judge Harmon displayed astonishment. Emma Rose stood, holding her rosy school tablet with both hands. She wasn't tearful. She wasn't frightened. She appeared more courageous than I'd ever witnessed. She proceeded toward the front, beyond the wooden benches, past the man attempting to separate her from me, and presented the judge with her tablet. I wasn't even aware she had it with her. I was unaware what she had recorded. I didn't even realize she knew how to capture recordings on Victor's mobile, but I recognized something had just shifted. The judge accepted the tablet. What is this? She asked. Emma's voice was gentle yet confident. From last weekend. Dad said those things when I was supposed to be sleeping, but I wasn't. I overheard him when he was really angry. And I thought, if you didn't believe Mom, perhaps you'd believe him. My heart fractured. My daughter had accomplished what I couldn't. She stood firm. She articulated the truth. And abruptly, the courtroom, the location where I felt most insignificant, belonged to her. Prior to the courtroom, before the suit and the silence and the judge's unfriendly gaze, before the recording, there was simply us, myself and Emma. Our flat wasn't spacious. It contained 2 bedrooms, 1 washroom, and the type of creaky flooring that groaned whenever you traversed them after 10 o'clock in the evening. But Emma didn't mind. She adored it. She referred to it as our sanctuary. She remarked that the rosy curtains in her room made it appear like the interior of a cotton candy formation. Most evenings, she'd recline on her mattress with her plush seal, pebbles, and request me to read 2 narratives instead of 1. I invariably agreed. I operated from home as an independent visual designer, which generated just sufficient income to maintain our lifestyle. My mother, Helen, resided a few blocks away and assisted with watching Emma when I had deadlines. She's the variety of mother who doesn't always communicate appropriately but invariably appears when needed. She'd deliver homemade pasta unannounced, cleanse my washroom when I wasn't observing, and inform me, "You're performing better than you perceive, Sophia." And for a duration, I trusted her. Emma was 7, intelligent, compassionate, and perceptive in manners that caused adults discomfort. She posed inquiries that forced reconsideration before dishonesty. She once discovered me weeping in the kitchen late at night and remained quiet. She merely brought over her coverlet and draped it around my shoulders. That characterized the type of child she embodied. Our preferred activity was the honesty container. I initiated it when Victor and I initially separated. I explained that any time she possessed a question or desired to discuss something confusing or alarming, she could document it and place it in the container. We'd examine 1 note together each night. Some were frivolous. Why do individuals snore? Others penetrated deeply. Will Dad cease loving me if I remain with you? I told her the truth consistently, regardless of how painful it was. The divorce hadn't been amicable. Victor desired authority more than he wanted guardianship. He consented to shared custody on documents, but in actuality, he pushed for more. He questioned every parental decision I made, criticized what I provided for meals, complained if I collected her 2 minutes tardy, and during his weekends, Emma would return withdrawn and hushed. Sometimes she wouldn't communicate with me whatsoever until Tuesday. I mentioned it in court, but Victor knew how to present himself. He was a previous university athlete turned marketing executive, the kind who made individuals laugh and remembered everyone's name. He wore self-assurance like a secondary skin. In public, he was entirely affable. In private, he could erupt over a spilled beverage or a missing charger. I maintained records. I documented everything: electronic communications, messages. I possessed a folder full of texts where he accused me of being unstable, where he employed language no child should hear their father use regarding their mother. But I never revealed those to Emma. I believed I was shielding her. One evening, following a particularly tense exchange, Emma inquired if I ever became frightened around Daddy. I paused. She gazed down at her cereal and stated, "I do, but I think I'm not supposed to mention that." That night I couldn't slumber. I stared at the ceiling and wondered if I had disappointed her by not contesting more vigorously, by attempting too diligently to maintain tranquility. A few weeks afterward, Victor filed for full custody. He claimed I was emotionally damaging Emma, that I misled her about him, and that I couldn't provide constancy. His attorney submitted declarations claiming I was erratic, undependable, and mentally unsuitable to co-parent. When I read those documents, my hands trembled. I had to sit on the floor. Helen sat beside me, grasped my wrist, and stated, "You possess the truth. That's adequate." I wanted to believe her, but in court, truth isn't resounding. It's concealed in evidence and twisted into strategy. Victor's attorney portrayed an image of a woman deteriorating. My attorney instructed me not to become emotional, not to speak unless questioned, and not to interrupt. But internally, I was screaming. Emma observed it all. Every tear I attempted to conceal. Every instance I whispered, "It's going to be all right," even when I wasn't certain it would be. I didn't realize she was observing that attentively. I didn't know she was listening. I didn't know she was planning anything whatsoever. She was merely 7. Yet somehow, she comprehended what none of us had vocalized. She understood truth mattered, and she recognized the court needed to witness it firsthand. The custody hearing was scheduled for a Monday morning. I barely slept the previous night. Emma had fallen asleep clutching Pebbles, her plush seal, and I sat beside her bed until sunrise, just watching her. My chest felt oppressive, as though something was compressing it. I knew this wasn't merely a legal matter. It was a struggle for her existence as she understood it, for the one thing I had invested every fragment of myself into safeguarding. That morning, my mom accompanied us. She wore her special scarf, the silky one she only utilized when she required courage. I believe she recognized I didn't possess much remaining within me. Emma wore a turquoise dress with daisies on it and packed her school tablet in her backpack as she habitually did. She didn't communicate much in the vehicle. She merely gazed out the window, humming a melody I didn't identify. When we entered the courthouse, Victor was already present. He was wearing the identical dark blue suit he wore to our wedding preparation dinner. Only this instance, there was no warmth behind his smile, just calculation. His attorney stood alongside him, clipboard in grasp, impeccably groomed, conversing in subdued tones that sounded rehearsed. Victor turned and observed me, then Emma. He smiled and waved as though nothing was amiss. Emma didn't reciprocate the wave. The courtroom felt like a theatrical setting, everything polished and frigid. My name was on the schedule, Victor's too. But the individual being evaluated wasn't merely me. It was the version of me he had created on paper. When Judge Harmon entered, the room descended into a quiet tension. She was tall, middle-aged, and didn't squander time. She gazed directly at Victor's attorney and stated, "You may commence." His lawyer began depicting the scenario immediately. He characterized Victor as a stable father. He referenced his consistent employment, his orderly residence, and his endeavors to shield Emma from Sophia's emotional unpredictability. He presented messages between Victor and me extracted completely out of context. In one, I informed Victor the first was overwhelmed and fatigued. He framed that as evidence of mental instability. In another, I requested him not to elevate his voice around Emma. That was distorted into a claim that I was controlling and manipulative. I sat there while the person I had once shared a life with transformed everything I'd ever said into ammunition. Victor added his own voice when questioned. "She's not well," he said, composed and collected. "She informs our daughter I'm the antagonist. She bewilders her. She makes Emma afraid of me. I don't want to take her away out of malice. I'm doing this to protect her." Protect her? That word impacted me like a blow. Judge Harmon gazed at me. "Ms. Reynolds, do you have a response?" I parted my lips, but nothing emerged. The words were in my chest, pounding to be released. But my voice betrayed me. My heart raced. My tongue felt burdensome. All I could do was glance over at Emma, who sat behind me, her small legs swinging off the bench. She gave me a look I'd never forget. Concerned but not fearful. My attorney cleared his throat and offered a feeble response about my emotional resilience and how overwhelm is a natural component of single parenting. It wasn't sufficient. It didn't scratch the surface of what was genuinely occurring. No one mentioned the occasion Victor cursed at me on the telephone while Emma was in the room. No one inquired why Emma started bedwetting again after his weekends. None of that was incorporated into their version of the narrative. The judge nodded slightly, writing notes, and then Victor stood again and stated, "Your Honor, I want full custody. I believe my daughter is being emotionally harmed, and I don't think shared custody is in her best interest anymore." I felt the barriers closing in. My breath shortened. My hands clenched the arms of my chair. I glanced at Emma again, uncertain how I could protect her from what was unfolding directly in front of her. That's when Emma released my mom's hand, stood up, and walked forward. She didn't request permission. She didn't hesitate. "Your Honor," she said, "I brought a recording from Dad's phone. I think you should see it." The room became still. Victor's face turned expressionless. My mom gasped. I turned in my seat, eyes wide. Emma stood there holding her school tablet, shoulders square, voice steady. Judge Harmon looked at her. "Excuse me?" Emma held the tablet up a little higher. "It's from last weekend. He didn't know I was awake. But I was. I heard what he said, and I thought it might matter." No one spoke. Not Victor, not his lawyer, not the judge. And for the first time since the hearing began, I sensed something shift. Emma had brought more than a recording. She had brought the truth into the room, and everyone perceived it. Emma stood in the center of the courtroom holding her tablet like it was a shield. Her daisy dress appeared a size too small, the hem grazing her knees, but she didn't fidget. She didn't look back for reassurance. She stood alone, confronting the judge. "I brought a recording from Dad's phone," she said again. "I think you should see it." Judge Harmon glanced at the bailiff. "Bring it here," she said. Emma walked a few steps forward and handed the device to the bailiff, who then gave it to the judge. The silence extended across the room like a taut rope. Victor's jaw was set, his lips pressed into a thin, unreadable line. His lawyer looked from him to the tablet and back again. Neither of them moved. The judge turned the screen toward herself and tapped the play button. For a moment there was nothing, just the sound of ambient noise, the kind of distant hum you hear late at night when the world outside has gone quiet. Then came his voice. Loud, harsh, not the smooth, composed tone he had used just minutes earlier in court. It was unmistakably Victor. He was shouting, "You think you're so clever, huh? Go ahead. Try telling anyone. See what happens. You'll end up residing in some foster home. And don't think your precious mother can rescue you. She's pathetic." A chair scraped. A plate clattered. Emma's voice, quiet and frightened, whispered, "I'm sorry." He interrupted her. "Don't talk back. You're fortunate I even permit you to visit. If you say a word to her, I swear." The judge hit pause. She didn't say anything immediately. She just sat there staring at the frozen screen. Victor shifted in his seat. His lawyer leaned in, whispering something rapidly and alarmed, but the judge raised her hand to silence him. "Where did this originate from?" she asked, her voice level. Emma answered without hesitation. "He left his phone on the sofa. I heard him shouting. I wanted to record it. I was scared, but I thought if someone heard it, maybe they'd believe me. And Mom," my chest tightened. My daughter had been scared. She had formulated a plan, and she had executed it with more courage than most adults I know. I wanted to run to her, wrap my arms around her, tell her she should never have had to do any of this. But I remained in my seat because this moment belonged to her. Victor spoke up, his voice suddenly forced and defensive. "Your Honor, that recording is taken completely out of context. I was disciplining her. She was misbehaving." "Enough," the judge said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the room like a blade. Victor stopped speaking immediately. Judge Harmon turned to Emma. "Thank you for being brave," she said. "You can return to your seat." Emma nodded and walked back, her steps slower now, the weight of the moment beginning to show in her shoulders. My mother pulled her into her lap and held her tightly. The judge looked at me. "Ms. Reynolds, do you have anything else to add?" This time I found my voice. "No, Your Honor. I think my daughter expressed it all." The judge nodded once, then leaned back in her chair. She closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them and looked across the courtroom. "In light of this evidence, I'm calling for an immediate review of all custody arrangements. Until that is completed, full temporary custody will be granted to Ms. Reynolds. Supervised visitation only for Mr. Blake. Bailiff, please escort Mr. Blake from the courtroom until further notice." Victor stood, stunned. "You can't be serious." "Sir," the bailiff said, stepping forward. He looked like he wanted to argue, but instead, Victor turned and walked out, his lawyer scrambling behind him. The courtroom emptied gradually after that, but we stayed seated. Emma was quiet, head resting against my mom's shoulder. I finally stood and walked over to them, kneeling beside her. "You were so brave," I said. She nodded but didn't speak. I could see it affecting her now, the weight of what she had done. She hadn't just revealed the truth. She had confronted someone who had spent years teaching her to remain silent. And in doing so, she had changed everything. The moment Victor exited that courtroom under the bailiff's watch, the entire atmosphere transformed. It felt like someone had opened a window in a room where we'd all been holding our breath. I could finally inhale. Not completely relaxed, but enough to remember that I still had a voice and a heartbeat. The judge left the bench shortly after issuing her order. Her expression never changed, but I saw something different in her eyes when she looked at Emma. A quiet recognition. Not sympathy, not surprise, respect. I gathered our belongings slowly, my fingers trembling slightly as I packed up Emma's bag. She was still curled into my mother's arm, exhausted but alert. Her tablet rested beside her on the bench, the screen still dark after the video. I reached for her hand. "Do you want to accompany me?" I asked. She nodded and slid down from the bench. As we exited the courtroom, people observed us. A few glanced away quickly. Others held their stares longer. One woman mouthed the word brave as we passed her outside the courtroom doors. I knelt down to Emma's height. My hands rested gently on her arms. "Are you okay?" She shrugged, then finally said, "I didn't want to do it, but I had to." "I know," I said. "I'm so proud of you. You shouldn't have had to carry that alone." She looked down at the floor. "I didn't know if they would believe me." My throat tightened. "They did because you told the truth and because you were strong enough to stand up when no one else could." Emma looked up at me, her eyes glistening with quiet tears. "Does this mean I don't have to go back to Dad's house?" I pulled her into my arms, holding her as tightly as I could without hurting her. "You're safe. That's what matters." The court officers gave us a few more instructions, including a temporary supervision schedule for Victor. He would be evaluated by a court-appointed counselor before any further access to Emma. It wasn't over. There would be more hearings, more documents, more days in courtrooms that felt like battlegrounds. But the hardest part was behind us. That afternoon, we went straight to my mom's house. I didn't want to be alone. I didn't want Emma to go back to our apartment and feel the silence that sometimes echoed too loudly in small spaces. My mom prepared soup even though it was warm outside. She always made soup on emotional days. She said it gave her something to stir when everything else felt out of control. Emma sat at the kitchen table drawing a picture with crayons while I filled out more court paperwork on the couch. At one point, she walked over and handed me what she'd created. It was a picture of two hands holding a heart. Underneath, she wrote in large, uneven letters, "Truth is brave." I cried then. Not the quiet, hidden kind, but the kind that comes from deep inside your chest when the pain has finally found its exit. Emma didn't say anything. She just sat beside me, leaning her head against my arm. That night before bed, we returned to our honesty container. It had been collecting dust for a few weeks. I held it in my lap while Emma sat across from me on her bed. "Do you want to start?" I asked. She shook her head and pointed to the folded note on top. I opened it and read aloud, "What happens when the truth hurts people?" I looked up at her. "Did you write this?" She nodded. Her voice was quiet. "I didn't want to hurt Dad. I just didn't want to be scared anymore." I reached across and took her hand. "The truth can hurt sometimes, but silence hurts more. What you did today didn't hurt anyone. You protected yourself. You protected us. That's not wrong." She stared at the jar for a few seconds, then whispered, "I think we should continue doing this." "We will," I said. "Every night." That night after she fell asleep, I walked into the living room and stood by the window. The street lights flickered outside. Cars passed. Life continued. But everything within our world had changed. Victor no longer controlled the narrative. He no longer controlled Emma's voice. And for the first time since the divorce, I felt like I could breathe deeply, knowing that I wasn't alone in this struggle anymore. My daughter had stepped into a world far too burdensome for her years. And she didn't just endure it. She transformed it. The final custody hearing occurred 4 weeks after the day Emma stood up in court. By then, everything had changed. The court-appointed counselor who interviewed Victor filed a detailed report. It outlined controlling behavior, emotional instability, and a concerning lack of empathy for Emma's well-being. He denied everything, of course, but the recording spoke louder than any of his words ever could. Combined with Emma's statement, it was enough for the court to remove his unsupervised custody rights. When the judge read her final decision, I sat quietly, holding my breath again. But this time it wasn't from fear. It was from hope. Full physical and legal custody was granted to me. Victor would have strictly supervised visits twice monthly at a neutral center with trained professionals. There would be no overnight stays, no more closed-door weekends, no more whispered threats. Emma's voice had shattered that illusion forever. We departed the courthouse in silence that day. Emma held my hand as we walked down the long steps outside. My mother walked beside us, her purse swinging against her hip, eyes scanning the sidewalk for Victor. Though we knew he wouldn't approach, he hadn't spoken to me since the first hearing. I was content with that. Later that evening, we went to a small diner. Emma loved the one with the red booths and animal-shaped pancakes. She sat across from me and asked, "Is it over now?" I didn't lie. "It's safer now," I said. "We're not done growing through this, but we're not afraid anymore." She nodded and stirred her chocolate milk with her straw. "I'm glad I told." So am I. There are days I still replay the courtroom in my mind. The way Victor's expression changed when Emma spoke. The way her voice, clear and calm, carried more weight than any legal argument made that day. My daughter reminded me that strength doesn't always come from shouting louder. Sometimes it comes from being brave enough to speak when you're not certain anyone will listen. In the weeks after the final ruling, I started therapy again. Not because I was breaking down, but because I finally had space to process what I had survived. I realized I had spent so long trying to remain afloat that I never learned how to feel secure again. That would require time, but now I had the time. Emma began drawing more. Her sketches changed. They used to be full of houses with no windows and stormy skies. Now she draws trees with roots and kids holding hands. She drew a picture of the honesty container and attached it to her bedroom wall. Every night she reminds me to check it. One night I pulled out a note that said, "Do brave people still get scared?" I smiled and told her, "Yes, they just don't let fear be the conclusion of the story." She wrote another one a few days later. "Can kids protect grown-ups too?" I looked at her and said, "You did." I share this narrative because there are women out there right now sitting in silence wondering if the truth will ever be sufficient. Wondering if anyone will believe them over the person who knows how to perform the right version of themselves in public. I share this narrative because sometimes the truth doesn't come from a lawyer or a courtroom argument. Sometimes it comes from a child who's witnessed more than she should have and who decides that remaining quiet is no longer an option. I used to think being a good mother meant shielding Emma from everything difficult and painful. Now I understand it means standing beside her through it, teaching her to tell the truth, letting her see me cry, then showing her what it looks like to rise again. We still have our difficult days, but they don't define us. We are not the frightened versions of ourselves that Victor tried to confine us in. We are vocal when we need to be. We are quiet when we choose to be. And we are liberated. Emma rescued us both that day. She didn't just bring the truth into that courtroom. She brought illumination. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was losing her. I felt like I was meeting her for the first time. If you're still here, thank you for listening. This wasn't a simple narrative to share, but I believe stories like this need to be told because somewhere out there, another mother is sitting in silence thinking no one will believe her, and maybe she just needed to hear this. If the story affected you, please appreciate the video, share it with someone who needs it, and leave a comment. I read them, and they signify more than you realize. And if you want to hear more authentic narratives, raw, honest, and full of heart, subscribe to the channel and activate notifications. There's more forthcoming. Thanks again for being here. Stay courageous, stay compassionate, and never forget that the truth matters. Now on to the next story. Story 3. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't hiding behind a door or creeping through the hallway like some cartoon villain. I was just walking upstairs with a basket of laundry, passing by the guest room where my wife, Allison, was talking to her sister on speakerphone. That's it. That's the moment everything changed. That's when the life I thought I had, the marriage, the partnership, the trust, started to unravel right in front of me like a cheap sweater tugged loose at the seam. My name's Jason, and I'm 36. By most accounts, I've lived a quiet, stable life. I run a mid-sized manufacturing business my dad started years ago. Nothing flashy, just steel brackets and hardware. Not the sort of thing that gets you featured in Forbes, but it keeps the lights on. My dad handed it down to me when he retired to Arizona, and over the years, I've grown it into something respectable. We're not mega rich, but we're very comfortable. I married Allison when I was 29, and she was 27. We met through mutual friends at a summer lake party. She had that effortless charm that draws people in. Always the center of attention, always knowing exactly what to say to make someone feel like they mattered. I was more reserved, the kind of guy who prefers to observe first, speak later. But she made me feel like I could open up. And for a long time, I thought we had a really good thing. We never had kids, though we talked about it. I thought we'd wait until we were a bit more settled. Less work stress, maybe move into a bigger place, but she kept pushing it off. Not yet, she'd say. Let's enjoy each other a little longer. I didn't question it much. Honestly, I liked our life. Dinners out, spontaneous weekend getaways, binge-watching crime shows on the couch with takeout. Things didn't change overnight. That's the thing people get wrong about broken relationships. There's no dramatic crash, no explosive argument that ends it all in a single moment. It's more like rust. Slow, silent, spreading behind the paint where you can't see it until it's already weakened the entire frame. Looking back, I think the first crack showed up around our 5th anniversary. She started being a little more distant, less affectionate, more critical. Little jabs about my clothes, the way I loaded the dishwasher, the kinds of people I hired at work. Nothing huge, just barbs that left tiny pinpricks in your confidence. When I asked if something was wrong, she always brushed it off. Just tired, just work stress, just in a mood. Eventually, I stopped asking. I thought maybe I was being too sensitive. Maybe this was just how long-term relationships went. You settle, you get comfortable, and maybe the spark fades a little. That's normal, right? The thing is, I was happy to make it work. I believed in loyalty, in sticking it out through the dry spells. I figured we'd find our rhythm again. So, I kept working hard, trying to be a good husband. I made sure the bills were paid, surprised her with flowers every now and then, booked weekend trips to break the routine. I wasn't perfect, I know that, but I genuinely tried. Meanwhile, Allison got closer and closer to her sister, Rachel. They'd always been tight, but it became intense. Long phone calls late into the night, whispered conversations when I walked into the room, shared glances at family dinners like they were holding on to a secret I wasn't privy to. I chalked it up to typical sister stuff. I didn't have siblings, so I didn't know what that dynamic was supposed to look like. Then came that afternoon, the one with the laundry basket, the casual stroll past the guest room, the words that brought everything to a grinding halt. I heard Allison laugh, light and dismissive. "No, I haven't told him yet," she said. Rachel's voice buzzed faintly from the speaker. "Still? What are you waiting for?" "I don't know," Allison replied. "The right moment, I guess. Maybe after the holidays or once we're done with the mortgage refinance. I don't want to make things messy." I froze. My brain couldn't even process what I just heard. Divorce? Mortgage refinance? What messy was she referring to? Rachel sighed. "You've been talking about this for months." "I know, but it's complicated. He's not a bad guy. He's just safe, predictable. I need more." There was a silence. Then Rachel said something that made my stomach twist. "So, you're just stringing him along until the paperwork's in your favor?" And Allison, my wife, my partner of nearly 7 years, didn't even deny it. "Basically," she said, "I'm not stupid. I need to be smart about this." I stood there like an idiot, holding a pile of socks and dress shirts, feeling like the floor had dropped out from under me. Every memory of us. Our wedding, our late-night talks, her head on my shoulder during movies. It all felt tainted, like I just found out my favorite song had been plagiarized. I didn't say anything. I didn't confront her. Not right away. I just walked back downstairs, sat on the edge of the couch, and stared at the blank TV screen while my thoughts spun in circles. She was planning to leave me. Not just planning, it was already a strategy, and I was just an obstacle. But the worst part wasn't the betrayal. It was the fact that she thought I wouldn't see it coming, that I wouldn't protect myself, that she could play this game behind my back and I'd still be the naive little husband holding the door open while she walked out with half my life. She thought she was being smart. What she didn't know was that I'd been quietly smart for years. And I wasn't just waiting. I was preparing. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake next to her, listening to the sound of her breathing, watching the faint glow of her phone light up the ceiling as she scrolled through Instagram or Pinterest or whatever social media black hole she fell into most nights. I didn't say a word. I didn't give any sign that I knew because I wasn't ready to play my hand yet. I needed to be patient, calculated, just like she was trying to be. And so began the quietest, most strategic 3 weeks of my life. But that's when things started to get really interesting. For the next few days, I lived a double life. Outwardly, nothing changed. I got up, made coffee, kissed Allison on the cheek, went to work, came home, asked about her day. We watched a couple of episodes of that true crime show she liked, ordered sushi on Friday night like we always did, and even went to brunch with her parents that Sunday. I laughed at her dad's bad jokes. I nodded as her mom gushed over the boutique she wanted to open. I smiled when Allison reached for my hand in front of them. But underneath all of it, I was planning, watching, filing things away. I started by pulling up our bank records. I already handled most of our finances, but now I looked closer. She'd opened a separate checking account 6 months ago. Just a few hundred here and there at first. Returns from stores, a freelance gig she dabbled in. Little bits of cash she probably thought I wouldn't notice. Then over time, larger deposits. A few thousand from a design job, which didn't align with any of the freelance projects she'd told me about. When I casually asked her what she'd been working on lately, she gave me a vague answer. Just some small stuff. Nothing steady yet. Still figuring it out. I smiled, nodded, Made a mental note. Then I called my lawyer. His name's Gerald, and he's been with the family for years. He handled my dad's business when he transitioned ownership to me, and I trusted him. We met for lunch at a quiet steakhouse on the edge of town, and I laid it out for him. Not everything, not yet, but enough. She's planning to leave, and I think she's trying to set herself up to walk away with more than she's entitled to. He looked over his glasses and said, "Do you have a prenup?" "No, we married young. I didn't think I needed one." Gerald sighed, then leaned forward. "Then you need to move fast, quietly. Start isolating assets. Put the business in a trust. Restructure your holdings. Clean up anything she might try to lay claim to later." I told him I wanted everything airtight, ironclad, bulletproof. I wasn't going to be another guy who got blindsided in court while his ex-wife walked off with the company his dad spent his life building. He nodded. "You're doing the right thing, but this isn't going to be fun." He wasn't wrong. The following week felt like I was dismantling my own life piece by piece. I met with bankers, accountants, estate planners, quietly moved the business into an irrevocable trust under my name, shifted certain accounts into structures she couldn't touch, removed her name from anything that wasn't legally obligated to remain joint. I even started separating my personal and business electronics, changing passwords, wiping old shared logins, and rerouting email notifications to secure backups. All of this happened under the surface, like the silent churn of tectonic plates. And still at home, I kept up the act. We even hosted a game night with friends. Wine, charcuterie, board games, fake laughs. I watched her sit across from me and smile, and I wondered how long she'd been pretending, too. But the breaking point, the moment when all the cracks split wide open, came 3 weeks later. And it was so stupid, so mundane, it almost didn't seem real at first. It started with a fight about laundry. No joke, laundry. I came home late from work one night, later than usual. We were finalizing a contract with a new supplier, and I'd had to stay behind to review the language before signing. I texted her I'd be home around 9 o'clock. When I walked through the door, she was sitting on the couch, arms crossed. A movie was paused on the screen. "You didn't do the laundry," she said flatly. I blinked. "I told you I'd be home late. I figured I'd do it tomorrow." She stood up, tense. "I needed the dryer for my clothes. I have brunch with my friends tomorrow. I can just throw them in now." She threw her hands up. "That's not the point, Jason. You're so inconsiderate lately." Something about the way she said that word, lately, set something off in me, like she was laying the groundwork brick by brick for some false narrative. That I was the distant one. That I had changed. That she was the victim here. I stayed calm. "I texted you. You said, okay." She scoffed. "You always have an excuse." That night spiraled into a long, exhausting argument. She brought up things I didn't even remember. Missed date nights, forgotten errands, passive-aggressive comments I apparently made in passing. I listened for a while, then something in me just shut down. I walked into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and stared out the window at our dark backyard while she kept ranting in the living room. That's when she said it. "You know, sometimes I feel like I'm already divorced." It was like a cold hand wrapping around my spine. I didn't say anything, just turned around, finished my water, and went upstairs. I didn't sleep again. My mind was too loud. That weekend, everything shifted. She started treating me with open disdain. No more pretending. Sarcastic comments, short tempers, refusing to make eye contact during meals, staying out later than usual saying she was with Maya and the girls. Even though Maya texted me to confirm a delivery address for Allison's birthday and mentioned she hadn't seen her in 2 weeks. And then the ultimate insult. I caught her on the phone again. Not with Rachel this time. This was a new name, Claire. I was walking back from the garage with a wrench in my hand when I heard her out on the patio, the back door slightly ajar. "He won't suspect a thing," she said. "I already got the documents. Just need to time it right. I want to make sure I get the vacation house in the split." My chest tightened. We didn't have a vacation house. Not yet. But I'd mentioned once in passing a listing I saw for a cabin upstate. I'd even printed out the brochure and left it on the counter. We hadn't even discussed buying it yet, but now she was plotting to stake a claim to something that didn't even exist yet, like she was already visualizing her new life with half of mine in her hands. It made me sick. I walked back inside, quiet as a ghost, set the wrench on the workbench, and went into my office. That's when I knew this wasn't just a rough patch. This wasn't boredom or restlessness. This was calculated, cold. She wasn't unsure. She wasn't scared. She was waiting for the next move in her little game. And I was done playing nice. The next morning, I went to Gerald and told him everything. Every word I'd overheard, every shift in behavior, every lie. He didn't even look surprised. "We'll finalize the last round of asset protections this week," he said. "I'll prepare for a potential filing on her part. You'll be ready." I nodded, but I still wasn't ready for what happened next. 3 days later, she filed. She didn't tell me in person. She didn't cry. She didn't even fake a tear. She just left the papers on the kitchen counter and went to stay at Rachel's. No note, no explanation. Just this sterile clang of a betrayal that no longer needed to be hidden. But I stayed quiet. I didn't text her, didn't call, didn't rage. I let her move. I let her feel powerful, in control. And then exactly a week later, I got the call. It was a Thursday afternoon. I was sitting at my desk sorting invoices when my phone lit up with her name. I stared at it for a long second, then picked up. Her voice was shaky, breathy, a little panicked. "Jason? Hey. I was just looking over some stuff. The accounts, the paperwork." "Okay." A pause, then quiet and trembling. "Why is everything in your name?" I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence stretch just long enough. Then I said the words I'd been saving like a dagger behind my back. Because I wasn't just waiting. I was preparing. She didn't say anything at first. Just breathed. And then the panic started to rise. "Jason, what does that mean? What did you do? Why is the business in a trust? Why can't my lawyer access the records for the joint investments?" I smiled just slightly. "I think you should talk to Gerald." And I hung up. That should have been enough. But Allison wasn't the type to walk away quietly. Not when she realized she was losing, and not when Rachel decided to get involved. Because that's when things really started to spiral out of control. And that's when the revenge stopped being quiet. I thought that would be the moment I felt vindicated. That after all the secrecy, the betrayal, the nights I'd stared at the ceiling wondering how I could have been so blind, that phone call would flip some kind of switch. That hearing her voice crack when she realized she was boxed out legally and financially would give me that satisfying Hollywood-style rush. But it didn't. I sat at my desk long after I hung up, the glow of my monitor washing over invoices I couldn't focus on. My office felt too quiet, like the air itself was waiting for me to process what had just happened. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel powerful. I felt hollow, because even though I had outplayed her, I had also lost something I didn't know I still valued until it was gone. This naive, loyal version of myself who truly believed love was enough. And now all I had was a silence that no amount of revenge could fill. The days that followed were the darkest of my life. Allison didn't call again. She sent everything through her attorney, who was clearly blindsided. I got a dozen frantic emails over the course of a week. Requests for account access, questions about asset movement, accusations of foul play. Gerald handled it all with calm professionalism. Everything I'd done was legal, strategic, and above board. But it didn't stop the chaos that followed. Rachel started showing up at my office. The first time, she marched in like she owned the place. Tight blazer, oversized sunglasses, lips pursed like she was chewing on something sour. "You're a coward," she said before I could even offer a greeting. "Good afternoon to you too, Rachel. You blindsided her after everything she did for you." I raised an eyebrow. "Everything she did? She wasted the best years of her life on your boring little existence." I smiled politely. "Is that what she told you? She could have left years ago. She stayed because she felt sorry for you. You're lucky someone like her even gave you the time of day." I leaned against my desk, arms folded. "You're right. I am lucky. Because now I know exactly who she is, and I've got the receipts to prove it." Rachel blinked, momentarily thrown off. I walked to the door and opened it. Next time, make an appointment. That didn't stop her from showing up again and again. Sometimes she came with fake apologies, begging me to reconsider. Other times she came to scream. Once she even brought Allison's mother, who stood awkwardly in the lobby as Rachel ranted like she was leading some sort of protest against corporate betrayal. Gerald advised a restraining order, but I held off. Part of me still believed the storm would pass, that Allison would retreat with whatever dignity she had left and start over. But that was naive Jason thinking. She wasn't done yet. Because when someone like Allison realizes they've lost control, when the spotlight shifts off them, they don't shrink. They escalate. I was about to learn that the hard way. It started with whispers in our social circle. Friends I hadn't heard from in weeks suddenly couldn't make it to plans. A few sent odd, cryptic messages asking if I was doing okay or if I needed help. Then came the rumors, quiet ones but effective, that I'd emotionally abused Allison, that I was secretly seeing someone else and had cut her off as punishment when she found out, that I'd manipulated the legal system to steal what was rightfully hers. It was disgusting and clever. She never said these things directly, just planted seeds. Hinted, let people fill in the blanks. And to my surprise, it worked. Even people who knew us, people who'd been to our wedding, our parties, our vacations, somehow gave her the benefit of the doubt. I guess a well-timed tear and a shaky voice go a long way. That was my fault. Not the legal battle, not the financial maneuvering, but the isolation. One night, I came home to an empty house and stood in the hallway, looking at framed photos of friends I hadn't spoken to in weeks. I picked up one of me and Allison at a beach wedding, smiling under string lights, holding wine glasses and pretending we had something worth celebrating. I stared at that photo for a long time. Then I dropped it. The glass cracked on impact, but the photo didn't tear. Her smile stayed frozen, eternal, untouched. I left the broken frame on the hallway table and walked upstairs, exhausted. That night, I opened my laptop and created a new folder on my desktop, Phase 2, because I was done waiting for things to blow over. If the life I had before was gone, fine. Then I'd build something better. But this time, for me, the rebuilding didn't happen overnight. It never does. I started by turning inward. Hard reset. No more coasting. No more self-pity. I joined a gym. Not a flashy one with juice bars and Instagram lighting. Just a small place near the office run by a retired Marine named Ken who didn't believe in excuses. I told him I wanted to get in shape. He didn't ask why. Just handed me a towel and said, "Show up at 6 a.m. No whining." I did. Every morning. Even when I was sore, even when I barely slept. It was the only time of day I felt fully in control. And with every drop of sweat, I felt something in me shifting, recalibrating. Next, I revamped the business. I stopped playing defense and started expanding. New marketing, new client outreach. I promoted a few younger employees who'd been quietly doing great work and let go of a couple of leeches who'd coasted on charm for too long. I got leaner, smarter, faster, and people noticed. Deals started closing faster. Clients complimented the new energy in the company. Even my dad, who rarely said more than "keep at it," called one night just to say, "Proud of what you've done, son." I didn't tell him everything. Not yet. But that moment stayed with me. Then came something unexpected. I got a message on LinkedIn from a woman named Evelyn, someone I hadn't seen since college. She'd been in my marketing class back when I still thought I'd work in advertising. We grabbed coffee one afternoon just to catch up. No expectations, no flirting, but it felt easy, honest. Like being around someone who remembered you before your life got complicated. We started seeing each other more often. Dinner here, drinks there. She knew about the divorce, everyone did, but she never pried. She asked how I was doing, not what happened. That alone made her stand out. And for the first time in months, I felt like maybe I wasn't broken. Maybe I'd just been surviving in the wrong chapter for too long. 3 months passed. By then, the legal process was nearly over. Gerald had handled everything with precision. Allison's attorney tried every angle. Emotional damages, contributions to lifestyle, even some vague claims about emotional duress. None of it stuck. When her lawyer finally saw the full picture, the trust, the records, the financial walls she couldn't scale, it was over. All she got was what the court mandated. A clean split of what little remained jointly held. A modest payout. No stake in the business. No future claim on assets. No spousal support. It hit her hard. Rachel, too. She stopped coming to the office after that. I heard they took a trip to Florida to clear their heads. I stayed quiet, professional, measured. Until one last thing happened that changed everything again. A mutual friend, a real one, called me out of the blue. His name was Derek, someone I'd known since high school. He was always neutral, the type who didn't get involved in drama. "I probably shouldn't be telling you this," he said. "But I just had lunch with Allison." I froze. "And she told me something that didn't sit right. She said she only stayed with you for as long as she did because she wanted the business and figured if she waited long enough, you'd make a mistake." My chest tightened. "She actually said that?" She laughed when she said it, like it was a joke, but it didn't feel like one. I didn't say anything. He hesitated. "Jason, I just thought you should know because she's not done. I could see it in the way she talked about you. She's bitter." I thanked him, hung up. Then I stood in the middle of my kitchen, breathing slow. She wasn't done. Not yet. And that was fine because neither was I. You want to see what happens when someone tries to ruin your life and fails? You give them a front row seat to what success looks like when it's built from pain. And you make sure they can never touch it again. That would be phase 3. Most people think revenge is about rage, but rage fades. If you're lucky, it burns out fast, leaves a crater in your chest, maybe some broken furniture, and then silence. But if you're really lucky, the rage doesn't burn. It simmers. It becomes strategy, focus, calculation. That's what I had now. Not bitterness, not spite, just clarity and time. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, I was free. Legally, financially, emotionally. But not fully. Not yet. Because even though Allison had walked away with scraps, she hadn't walked away empty. She had something far more dangerous than money. She had a story. And stories are powerful, especially when told by someone who can cry on command. I started hearing it more often. People dropping hints that they'd heard things. A couple of my former friends from our couples group stopped replying to texts. One even blocked me on social media, which was wild considering I was the one who paid for their destination wedding gift last year. Allison was playing the long game. She couldn't touch my assets, so she was coming for my reputation, my network. She was painting herself as the tragic heroine abandoned by the cold-hearted businessman, the man who blindsided her, who planned her financial downfall behind her back. I knew her playbook. I'd lived with it for 7 years. But now I had my own. The first thing I did was gather information. Not dirt, not yet. Just perspective. I started reconnecting with people I hadn't talked to in years. Quiet conversations. Coffee here, a catch-up dinner there. Not with anyone close to Allison, she'd poisoned those wells, but with people adjacent. People on the periphery who'd always had a sense of what our dynamic was. One of them was Natalie. She used to be part of our extended friend group back when Allison and I hosted those awful monthly wine and board game nights. She was sharp, observant, and always polite, but a little distant from Allison. We hadn't spoken in over a year. I invited her out for lunch, no agenda, just to reconnect. But halfway through her salad, she looked up and said, "So, you know she's dating that guy now, right?" I blinked. "What guy?" "Some finance dude. Name's Bryce. Works at her dad's firm. He was at one of your parties once." I didn't remember him. "Is it serious?" Natalie gave a tight smile. "Well, she was dating him before the divorce was finalized. So you tell me." I stared at her, trying to process. "She cheated." She tilted her head. "She says it wasn't cheating. She says you were emotionally unavailable for years." There it was again. The story. The curated narrative. "Doesn't matter," I said. "She can date who she wants." Natalie watched me for a moment. "Jason, I'm going to be honest. People believed her at first. The crying, the victim act. It works. But lately, she's slipping. She's saying too much. Inconsistent stories. She's bragging to people about how she won the divorce. It's rubbing people the wrong way. That got my attention. She's losing control of the narrative? Natalie nodded. If you had something to say, your side, I think people might actually listen now. I didn't say anything right away because I wasn't ready to tell my side. I was ready to show it. The next move came by accident. One afternoon, I walked into a small downtown art gallery that had just opened a few weeks prior. I was waiting to meet a client nearby, and I had 20 minutes to kill. I didn't expect anything special, but that's when I met Jonah. Jonah was the gallery owner, a soft-spoken guy in his late 20s with this quiet charisma that made you feel instantly at ease. We talked for a few minutes and he asked what I did. When I told him about my manufacturing business, his eyes lit up. You ever think about sponsoring local creatives? He asked. Like helping fund exhibits, getting your brand tied to culture. It was a simple question, but it planted a massive seed. Allison had always mocked my work. Brackets and bolts, she'd say. So glamorous. She thought it was beneath her, that it lacked any sophistication or style. What if I turned that exact business into a brand? Not just function, identity. Support for local builders, artists, creators. What if I reclaimed the story of who I was? Not just some boring guy with a company, but someone who used his resources to uplift others. That night, I didn't sleep. I was too busy outlining a new campaign. Within weeks, I partnered with Jonah to sponsor a community art event downtown. Free to the public, local artists, musicians, and food vendors. The event was called Steel and Soul, a subtle nod to the manufacturing roots and the creative future. It was a hit. People came in droves. I gave a short speech, nothing flashy, just talked about building things that last. Products, relationships, communities. It wasn't about Allison. It didn't have to be. But people noticed, especially the ones who had quietly believed her narrative. Suddenly, their eye was on a man who was calm, composed, respected, generous. They couldn't reconcile that image with the cold-hearted man Allison had described. The whispers started to shift, and I wasn't done yet. A few weeks later, I hosted a private dinner. Just 10 people carefully selected. Business leaders, creatives, city planners, nonprofit directors. We ate, talked, shared ideas. No hard pitch, just honest connection. By the end of the night, I had 3 new partnerships lined up, 2 with nonprofit mentorship programs for underprivileged youth, and 1 with a startup incubator for minority-owned small businesses. I didn't announce it on social media. I didn't post photos. I let the results speak. And quietly, slowly, Allison's version of the story began to unravel. People stopped mentioning her at events. A couple of our former friends started circling back. One even apologized, said they jumped to conclusions too quickly. It wasn't about winning them back. It was about letting the truth breathe. But the real opportunity came in the form of an email. It was from a woman named Susan, an event coordinator for a high-profile charity gala Allison's father's firm helped sponsor every year. It was one of those society events Allison used to obsess over. Who wore what, who sat where, which photos made it into the newsletter. Susan wrote, "We're impressed by your recent initiatives. We'd love for you to be a featured speaker at the upcoming gala. Would you be open to joining the event as a guest of honor?" I nearly laughed. Guest of honor at her event. Oh, this was too perfect. I replied that I'd be honored to attend, but only on one condition, that I could speak. 5 minutes. Nothing major. Just a short talk on resilience, rebuilding, and the importance of community. Susan agreed. And just like that, the final piece clicked into place. I didn't care about humiliating Allison. I didn't need to expose her publicly. But being seen, not as the man she tried to paint me as, but as the man I actually was, that was the one thing she couldn't control. Her stories couldn't stand against reality. She was about to sit in that ballroom next to her new finance boyfriend, sipping overpriced champagne, thinking she'd escaped the wreckage clean. And then the lights would dim, the spotlight would shift, and I'd walk onto the stage. Not to attack her, not to get even, but to make sure she saw with absolute clarity that I had survived her storm and built a castle from the debris. But there was still one last thing to do before that night. A private message to someone I hadn't contacted in months. I opened my phone and typed, "Hey, I know things have been messy and I haven't reached out in a while, but there's something happening soon. I think you should be part of a night that's about rebuilding. You always believed in that. Hope to see you there." The message was to Evelyn, because some victories are sweeter when they're shared. And I wanted someone next to me who saw me before the storm, before the betrayal, the lies, the heartbreak. Someone who remembered the real me. Someone who saw the man rising from the ashes. Because the gala, that wasn't the end. That was just the curtain lift. The gala was held at the Harborview Hotel, the kind of place with marble floors so polished they looked wet and valet attendants who smiled like they knew all your secrets. 1,000 soft lights floated over round tables dressed in white and gold, with crystal centerpieces and tiny calligraphy name cards no one could actually read in the dim glow. It was the kind of event Allison used to talk about like it was the pinnacle of success. "This," she once told me, twirling in front of a mirror in a silver dress, "is where people arrive." Now, it was my name on the program, not hers. I arrived fashionably late, not out of arrogance, but because I didn't want to linger. I wanted to arrive, and when I walked in, heads turned. I wore a sharp navy suit, custom-fitted the week prior. No tie, clean shave, quiet confidence. Evelyn stood beside me, elegant in a deep green dress that made her look like she belonged on the cover of something expensive. She wasn't my date, technically. She didn't need a label. She was support, strength. She was calm and graceful and, more importantly, real. Allison was already there. I saw her before she saw me, seated 3 tables from the stage next to a tall, square-jawed man I assumed was Bryce, her new finance guy. He looked like a walking LinkedIn profile. Confident, tan, too much teeth. She wore a strapless black gown with an open back, the kind she always said was elegant with just enough danger. Her posture shifted the second she spotted me. One hand went to her hair. The other gripped the stem of her champagne glass a little tighter. She nudged Bryce. He looked, blinked. I nodded in their direction. Neither smiled. Perfect. The speeches began around 8 o'clock. Local politicians, business leaders, influencers who couldn't string a sentence together without glancing at a teleprompter. People clapped, smiled politely, checked their phones under the tablecloth. Then the MC walked to the mic, beaming. "And now," she said, "it's my honor to welcome someone who's shown this city what it means to rebuild after loss, to rise after chaos, and to give back with quiet strength. Please welcome Jason Hale." The applause was warm, not thunderous, but respectful. I walked to the stage, steady and unrushed. I wasn't nervous. Not anymore. The lights were bright but not blinding. I stood at the podium, adjusted the mic, and scanned the room. My eyes paused just briefly on Allison. She stared straight at me, unreadable. Good. Let her wonder. "Thank you," I began. I wasn't expecting this honor. And if you'd asked me a year ago whether I'd be standing here tonight, I would have said no. Not because I didn't want to be, but because a year ago my life looked very different. The room got quieter. I was married, settled, focused on maintaining the life I'd built. I thought success meant stability. I thought love meant endurance. I believed with everything in me that if you gave people your best, they'd give you their best back. I paused just long enough. But sometimes they don't. Allison shifted in her seat. Bryce leaned in slightly, whispering something. She didn't respond. Sometimes they take what you give. They smile while doing it. And then they leave. People were really listening now. And when that happens, you have 2 choices. You can fall apart, drown in bitterness, in blame and shame. Or you can take a breath, look around and say, "Okay, what's next?" I let that land. I chose what's next. I took the pain, the betrayal, the loneliness, and I turned it into something stronger. Not louder, just stronger. I didn't scream into the void. I didn't burn everything down. I built something better. I rebuilt my company. I rebuilt my name. I rebuilt me. And I started giving back. Not because I wanted applause, but because I finally understood what it meant to create something that can't be taken. I glanced at Evelyn. She smiled, small but proud. I returned it. And that's the message I want to leave you with tonight. Your worth isn't measured by what people say about you. It's measured by what you do. Quietly, consistently, even when no one's watching, especially when they're not. I finished simply. Thank you. Applause erupted, louder this time. Not for a spectacle, but for a man who had survived and didn't need to scream about it. I stepped down from the stage. Hands clapped my back. People murmured praise. The mayor's assistant asked to schedule coffee. A reporter handed me her card. Someone else asked about sponsorships. And then I felt her behind me. Allison. Her voice had the same soft edge I remembered, the tone she used when she wanted something. I turned slowly. She looked poised, but I could see the cracks. The way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes, the slight tremble in her hand. Jason, she said. That was quite a speech. Thanks. She waited. Then, can we talk? Just for a second. Evelyn appeared at my side, but I gently touched her arm. It's okay. We stepped to the side, away from the crowd, near a marble column that shielded us. I didn't know you were speaking tonight, Allison said. Surprise. She forced a laugh. You've changed. No, I said. I just stopped hiding who I was. Her lips parted, then closed. She looked at me like she was trying to recognize me, like I was a puzzle missing pieces she used to own. I never meant for things to get so messy, she said quietly. I was hurt. I was confused. I didn't know how to leave without losing everything. You didn't lose everything, I said. You just lost access. She flinched just slightly. I didn't press it. I see you brought Bryce, I added, glancing past her. She didn't react. I hope he's good to you, I said. I really do. Jason, she started, but I held up a hand. I'm not angry anymore, Allison. I was for a long time. But now, I'm just grateful. Her brow furrowed. Grateful. I nodded. If you hadn't betrayed me, I'd still be stuck in that version of myself you never respected. You didn't just leave me. You freed me. She looked like she wanted to speak, but no words came. And that silence, that was the real victory. Because Allison wasn't used to being speechless. She wasn't used to not being able to spin, to twist, to control the outcome. And now she had nothing left to twist. I should get back, I said. Enjoy your night. I turned and walked away. She didn't follow. She never would again. The rest of the evening was a blur of conversation, laughter, opportunity. But it wasn't about image. It wasn't even about revenge anymore. It was about peace. Revenge, when done right, isn't about destruction. It's about demonstration. Of who you've become, of what they lost, of how they'll never reach you again. That night, as Evelyn and I walked out of the harbor view under a sky full of stars, she slipped her hand into mine. Do you feel better? She asked softly. I thought about it. About the betrayal, the pain, the plan, the execution. Then I looked up at the city skyline. Bold, silent, unshakable. I smiled. Yeah, I said. I feel free. And I meant it. Because when someone tries to ruin your life and fails, you don't just move on. You rise and you make sure they see it from below. Now on to the next story. Story 4. My name's Adrian. I'm 29. And if you had asked me a few years ago, I would have told you I wasn't the type of person who needed a big wedding. I always imagined something small, personal, just me, my future wife, and the people who truly cared about us. But as life often does, it took that simple dream and threw it into the middle of a storm I didn't see coming. It started months before the wedding when invitations went out. My fiancée, Emma, and I were so excited. We spent hours choosing the perfect little cards, writing each name carefully, thinking about how much each person meant to us. We didn't have a massive budget, but what we lacked in extravagance, we made up for in thoughtfulness. For family, I figured it was a given they'd be there. My parents lived just an hour away. My sister, Melissa, was only 30 minutes from them. They were my closest relatives, and even though we weren't the most emotionally open family, I still assumed they'd show up for me on one of the biggest days of my life. But if there's one thing about my family, It's that they somehow find a way to make everything feel like a competition or, worse, like my life events are inconveniences to theirs. Ever since I moved out at 20, there's been this undercurrent of passive-aggressive commentary from my mom about how I left them behind or how I was too busy with my own life to come around as often as they wanted. Melissa, on the other hand, has always been, well, the golden child. She's 5 years older than me, and my mom seems to believe she can do no wrong. Melissa could miss birthdays, forget anniversaries, or make cutting remarks at family gatherings, and somehow it was always brushed off. If I so much as forgot to text Happy Mother's Day before noon, I'd get an earful. Still, I didn't expect anything dramatic about the wedding. I thought maybe they'd grumble about the drive or the fact that it wasn't a lavish event like Melissa's wedding years ago. But they'd be there. I was wrong. 2 weeks before the big day, I sent a quick reminder to the family group chat. Hey, just a heads up, Emma and I are getting married next Friday. Would love to see you there. I figured it was more polite than assuming they'd remember, especially since Melissa hadn't mentioned anything about the RSVP card we sent. Her reply came less than 2 minutes later. We're busy. Don't expect us. No explanation. No, sorry. No, we'll try. Just flat. Before I could even type a response, my mom chimed in. It's not always about you, Adrian. You can't expect everyone to drop their lives because you're having a wedding. I stared at my phone trying to process that. I could feel Emma's eyes on me from across the couch, her hand pausing midair as she scrolled through her laptop. What's wrong? She asked, her voice careful. They're not coming? I said slowly, as if saying it any faster would make it feel too real. Emma blinked like she wasn't sure she'd heard me right. Your mom and sister? To your wedding. I held up my phone so she could see the thread. Her lips pressed into a thin line, but she didn't say anything right away. That's one of the things I love about her. She knows when I need silence more than words. But the silence in that moment felt like a weight. I typed back just 2 words. Got it. No begging, no guilt-tripping. If they didn't care enough to be there, I wasn't going to twist myself into knots to convince them. Over the next few days, I told myself I'd let it go. I still had Emma's family, who had welcomed me with open arms since day one. I had friends traveling from out of state just to be there. I didn't need my mom or Melissa to make the day special. But the thing is, when it's your own family, you can't just flip a switch and stop caring. It started eating at me in quiet moments. When I was at work, when Emma and I were finalizing seating charts, or when I'd catch myself daydreaming about walking down the aisle and realizing there'd be 2 glaring empty seats in the front row. I kept picturing Melissa's smug face, imagining her saying something like, well, you didn't come to my barbecue last summer, so why should I come to your wedding? Then, 5 days before the wedding, I found out what busy meant. A cousin of mine posted a picture on Facebook. Melissa, my mom, and a few other relatives at a fancy winery, all smiling like they were posing for a lifestyle magazine spread. The caption read, Family Getaway Weekend. Couldn't be happier. The kicker? The date on the post was for the same weekend as my wedding. They planned it weeks in advance. That wasn't just them not coming. That was them deliberately choosing something else, something they knew would clash. It wasn't about being busy. It was about making a point. I didn't comment. I didn't message. I just stared at that photo for a long time, feeling this mix of anger and something that almost felt like grief. Because in that moment, it hit me that my family wasn't just absent. They were actively avoiding me. And deep down, I wanted them to feel even a fraction of the sting they'd just given me. And that's when the idea started forming, quietly at first, just a thought, a whisper in the back of my mind. But the more I sat with it, the louder it got. The night before the wedding, that whisper became a plan. I knew exactly what they'd see on Facebook, and I knew exactly how it would make them drop everything. That was the moment everything shifted, and they had no idea what was coming. The morning after I saw that winery post, I woke up with this heavy, gnawing pit in my stomach. It wasn't just about them not coming anymore. It was about the pattern. Every time something important happened in my life, they found a way to downplay it or turn it into a competition. And the more I thought about it, the more memories came flooding back, each one like a little paper cut I'd ignored until I realized I was bleeding. I remembered my college graduation. It was the first time I'd ever seen my dad cry. Except he wasn't crying for me. He was tearing up because Melissa had managed to drive 2 hours in heels and still look camera-ready for the ceremony. My mom gushed about her the entire day, barely mentioning my name unless someone else brought it up. I brushed it off back then, telling myself it was just how they were. But now I could see it for what it was. Favoritism, plain and simple. Even the way they talked about Emma had been off. From the moment we got engaged, my mom had this subtle way of undermining her. She'd say things like, "Well, I hope she knows how to handle you, Adrian," in front of everyone, followed by that fake little laugh she used to make things sound like jokes. Melissa would chime in with backhanded compliments. "She's pretty in her own way," or, "You must really love her if you're willing to settle down so young." As if Emma wasn't standing right there. Emma always took the high road, smiling politely, but I knew those comments stuck with her. She once told me in a quiet moment after dinner with my family, "I feel like no matter what I do, I'll never be enough for them." That sentence replayed in my head as I stared at that winery picture. They weren't just skipping our wedding. They were sending a message. "You're not worth showing up for." 3 days before the wedding, my cousin Sarah called me. She's one of the few relatives who's been consistently kind to me, so I picked up expecting her to check in. Instead, she sounded awkward. "Hey, I just thought you should know. Melissa's been telling people that your wedding's going to be small, like really small. She said it's more of a casual get-together than an actual wedding." I blinked, stunned. Why would she even say that? Sarah hesitated. "She told Aunt Linda that you're probably cutting corners because you can't afford anything bigger. She also implied that Emma's family is covering most of it." I could feel the heat rising in my chest. That was a lie, and she knew it. Emma and I had worked our tails off to pay for every detail ourselves. It wasn't a lavish event, but it was ours, and we were proud of it. Hearing Melissa dismiss it like that felt like someone spitting in my face. When I told Emma, she gave me this look, half hurt, half tired. It's like they can't stand to let you have a moment without trying to cheapen it. It wasn't just words, either. The next day, I found out from another cousin that Melissa had been joking about throwing her own party that weekend and inviting all the same people just to see who would pick which event. I didn't even know if that part was true or if she was just saying it to stir things up, but the fact that it was believable said enough. By now, the anger had hardened into something else. A quiet determination. I wasn't going to plead with them, and I wasn't going to argue, but I also wasn't going to let them write the story of my wedding as some small, forgettable thing that no one cared about. I started making some calls, not to them, but to people I knew they kept tabs on. Relatives they always wanted to impress, acquaintances they liked to boast about knowing. I didn't tell anyone my full plan, just that there'd be something worth seeing after the ceremony. My voice was calm, almost casual, but inside I was piecing everything together. And then the final straw came. The day before the wedding, my mom sent me a text out of the blue. "If you're going to post pictures online, please make sure they're tasteful. We don't want people thinking you couldn't do better." I read it 3 times, my jaw tightening with each pass. That was it. That was the moment I knew there'd be no holding back. Because what they were about to see on Facebook wasn't just going to be tasteful, it was going to be unforgettable. The morning of the wedding, I woke up before the alarm, staring at the ceiling in that surreal, quiet moment when you realize the day you've been planning for months has finally arrived. Emma was still asleep beside me, her breathing slow and even, her hand resting lightly on my chest. For a few minutes, I let myself feel the simple joy of it. No drama, no distractions, just the thought that by the end of the day, I'd be married to the woman I loved. But peace doesn't last long when my family is involved. Around 7 a.m., my phone started buzzing. At first, I ignored it, figuring it was friends or vendors confirming details. But when it buzzed again and again, I reached over to check. The first thing I saw was a Facebook tag. It was Melissa. I clicked on it and instantly felt my stomach drop. There, plastered across my feed for everyone to see, was a photo of Melissa, my mom, and a group of relatives at a long brunch table, all raising champagne glasses. The caption read, "Celebrating family where it counts." Couldn't think of a better way to spend the weekend. The timestamp, 6:53 a.m. It wasn't just the photo. It was the comments. My mom had replied underneath, "So glad we're all together for something meaningful. Love you all." Another relative chimed in, "Much better than sitting through a boring little wedding." Melissa had liked that comment. I felt my hands clench without meaning to. This wasn't them simply choosing not to come. This was them publicly declaring that my wedding wasn't worth their time, framing it as some insignificant event they were wise to skip. And because they tagged me, they made sure everyone connected to me could see it. It was humiliation wrapped up in a fake toast and an Instagram filter. Emma woke up to find me sitting at the edge of the bed, phone in hand, staring at the screen like it was something dangerous. "What happened?" she asked, her voice still groggy. I turned the phone toward her. She read it, her face tightening with every line. When she looked up, her eyes were sharp. "They did that on purpose." "Of course they did," I said quietly. "They could have just stayed silent, but they had to make a point." And as if that wasn't enough, the second betrayal came barely 2 hours later. We were getting ready. Emma was at her sister's house doing hair and makeup, and I was at the venue checking final details, when one of my groomsmen, Mark, pulled me aside. "Hey, you might want to know about this," he said carefully, pulling out his phone. He showed me a screenshot from a private Facebook group that Melissa ran for family and close friends. Apparently, she posted there the night before, "Heads up, if you're invited to Adrian's thing tomorrow, don't feel bad about skipping. It's not going to be much, just a small, no-frills get-together. We'll have something more fun here with real drinks for anyone who wants to swing by." The comments underneath made my stomach twist. People laughing, saying they'd rather be where the party's at. Some even said they'd RSVP'd to my wedding but might drop in to Melissa's instead. I just stood there staring at Mark's phone, trying to decide which part hurt more. The fact that my own sister was openly undermining my wedding, or the fact that my mom had liked the post. I felt a strange calm wash over me, the kind that comes right before a storm. This wasn't just petty favoritism anymore. This was sabotage. She wasn't content to skip my wedding. She wanted to make sure other people skipped it, too. She wanted to rewrite the story before it even happened. I didn't tell Emma right away. She had enough to focus on, and I didn't want to start her day with anger. But inside, I made a promise to myself. This was the last time my family would ever get to play the role of the puppet master in my life. And as I stood there watching the final touches being put on the reception hall, the plan I'd been quietly building for days solidified into something sharper, more deliberate. They wanted to make a statement. I'd make one they'd never forget. By the time guests began arriving at the venue, the sting of what they'd done was no longer just sitting in my chest. It had settled deep, like a weight pressing on every breath. I smiled, shook hands, and greeted people, but inside I felt hollow. Every time my eyes drifted toward the front row, the 2 empty chairs stood out like neon signs. They weren't just empty seats. They were proof. Proof that my family had chosen not to be there. Proof that they'd rather sip champagne at some fun alternative gathering than witness the vows I'd spent my whole life hoping to say. Emma's side of the family noticed. I could see it in the way her mom's smile flickered when she looked at the front row, or the way her cousins exchanged quiet glances. Even my best man, Chris, caught my arm before the ceremony started and muttered, "Man, I'm so sorry." He didn't have to explain why. The ceremony itself was beautiful. Emma was radiant. The vows were heartfelt. But there was a moment, just as we turned to face everyone after the kiss, when my gaze scanned the room almost on instinct. For a split second, I expected to see my mom's face in the crowd, Melissa rolling her eyes like she thought the whole thing was overly sentimental. But the space where they should have been was still painfully, deliberately empty. At the reception, I went through the motions, cutting the cake, clinking glasses, giving my toast, but I felt like I was watching it all from the outside. My joy kept hitting a wall, every happy moment shadowed by the thought of what they were doing right then. Were they laughing at me? Checking social media to see if they'd won the night? Maybe Melissa was posting another picture to make sure I saw them having a better time. When the photographer gathered everyone for the big group photo, I couldn't ignore the gap where they should have been standing. Later, when the DJ invited family up for the first dance circle, Emma's dad pulled me into a hug and whispered, "You've got us now." It was meant to be comforting, and it was, but it also broke something in me because it reminded me how absent my own blood was and how normal that absence had become. That night, after the last guest left and the venue was quiet again, I slipped away to the side garden and sat alone under the string lights. Emma was inside with her friends, laughing over the last slices of cake, but I needed a moment to breathe. The cool air felt good, grounding, but my mind wouldn't stop circling the same thought. They didn't just miss my wedding. They chose to erase it. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through Facebook. Sure enough, Melissa had posted again. A boomerang video of her and my mom clinking wine glasses at the winery with the caption, "Perfect day, perfect company." Dozens of comments, heart emojis, people telling them how lovely they looked. And because she'd tagged me again, it was now sitting on my own timeline for everyone in my circle to see. Something about that broke the last thread of hope I had that they might regret it later. They weren't embarrassed. They were proud. I didn't reply. I didn't untag myself. I didn't even block them. Instead, I sat there under those lights, letting the anger burn low and steady. If I'd learned anything about my family, it was that reacting too soon only gave them more ammunition. But if I waited, if I was patient, I could make sure my response wasn't just emotional, it was unforgettable. As I watched the tiny white bulbs sway overhead, I started piecing the plan together in my mind. This wasn't about getting even in the heat of the moment. This was about making sure that when I finally acted, they'd feel the sting for years. And in that quiet, with the laughter from the reception faint in the background, I made a promise to myself. I'd stop trying to earn a place in their version of family. Instead, I'd show them exactly what it felt like to be left out. The weeks after the wedding were strange, like living in two different realities. On one hand, my life with Emma was better than ever. We went on our honeymoon to this little coastal town in Italy, where the mornings smelled like espresso and the afternoons felt like time had slowed just for us. For the first time in years, I wasn't constantly glancing at my phone, waiting for some passive-aggressive text from my mom or some new slight from Melissa. On the other hand, there was the silence. I didn't hear from them at all. Not a call, not a congratulations card. Nothing. The only acknowledgement of my wedding from my side of the family was a single half-hearted comment my mom left on one of Emma's honeymoon photos. "Looks fun." I knew better than to take it personally. This was their way of saying, "We're still not impressed." Instead of letting it eat at me, I put my focus into building the life Emma and I wanted. And little by little, that life started to grow in ways I hadn't expected. I'd been running my own design firm for a couple of years, mostly small projects, word-of-mouth clients, but about a month after the wedding, I landed a major contract with a real estate developer who wanted to revamp all their marketing materials. It was the biggest project I'd ever taken on. And when it launched, my business took off. Referrals started pouring in. I went from managing 2 part-time contractors to having a small team and an actual office space. Emma was thriving, too. She got promoted to a senior position at her firm, which came with a pay bump and a lot more autonomy. We moved out of our cramped apartment into a 3-bedroom house with a backyard big enough for the dog we'd been talking about getting since our engagement. It was the kind of progress I knew Melissa and my mom couldn't stand. Not because they wanted bad things for me exactly, but because they hated the idea that I could be happy, successful, and completely fine without their approval. I started posting more online. Not in an obnoxious, bragging way, but enough to show the milestones. Photos of the new office, shots from industry events, little glimpses of our weekends exploring the city. I knew for a fact they saw every single one. They never liked or commented, but Sarah would quietly tell me, "Yeah, they've been talking about it. Melissa said you're trying to show off." In the past, that might have bothered me. Now, it only made me more deliberate, because I wasn't just building my life, I was building my leverage. A few months in, I got an unexpected call from an old friend who worked in event planning. She was organizing a high-profile charity gala and wanted to hire my firm to handle all the design work. It was going to be huge, hundreds of attendees, press coverage, the works. And when she mentioned the guest list, I nearly laughed out loud. My mom's best friend, the one she's always trying to impress, was going to be there. So were a handful of Melissa's influential friends she liked to name-drop at every family dinner. I said yes without hesitation. As the months rolled on, our social circle expanded. We started hosting dinner parties, going to fundraisers, getting invited to events that my family would have given anything to be part of. I wasn't chasing them anymore. I was in a completely different lane. And for the first time, they were the ones on the outside looking in. Every so often, Sarah would drop a little update that made me realize just how much it was getting to them. My mom had apparently started bringing up my name in conversations with this faux casual tone. Like she was so happy I was doing well, only to slip in a dig about how it's easy when you marry into money, which wasn't even true. Melissa, meanwhile, had started making vague posts about people, forgetting where they came from. I didn't respond. I didn't have to, because I knew the moment was coming, the perfect opportunity to make my point without saying a single cruel word. And when that opportunity came, it was going to hit them exactly where it hurt the most. It was almost a year after the wedding when the setup I'd been waiting for finally landed in my lap. Though it came in the most ordinary way possible. I was in my office one Tuesday afternoon wrapping up a client call when my phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. At first, I thought it was just another family update, but as soon as I opened it, I realized it was something different. She'd forwarded me a screenshot from Melissa's Facebook page. In it, Melissa had posted about her upcoming anniversary party. Apparently, she and her husband were planning a once-in-a-lifetime vow renewal ceremony and wanted to make it a massive social event. The caption was dripping with humble brag energy. So excited to celebrate our love with the people who matter most. Normally, that would have just been eye-roll material, but then I noticed the details. She was hosting it at one of the city's most exclusive venues, a venue I happened to have just worked with for that high-profile charity gala. In fact, the owner and I had hit it off during the project, and he told me more than once, "Anytime you need the space, just say the word." That connection alone would have been enough to tuck away for later. But Sarah's next message is what made me stop mid-scroll. "She's been bragging about the guest list," Sarah wrote. "She's inviting half the city, but the thing is she hasn't actually booked the venue yet. Says she's working out the details." I sat back in my chair, letting that sink in. Melissa was publicly hyping an event she hadn't locked down. At a venue I now had a direct line to. The universe couldn't have handed me a cleaner setup if it tried. I didn't do anything right away. Patience was still my best weapon. Instead, I filed that nugget of information away and kept working. Over the next few weeks, my position only got stronger. My business hit another growth spurt thanks to a major contract with an international brand that boosted my profile. Emma and I were featured in a local lifestyle magazine as one of the up-and-coming couples in the community. Invitations to more exclusive events rolled in, and my network kept expanding. Through it all, I stayed connected with the venue owner, even collaborating with him on a new design concept for their marketing materials. He trusted me, liked me, and most importantly, was willing to prioritize my requests. Then, about 2 months before Melissa's planned vow renewal, I got a call from Sarah that confirmed everything I needed. "She's still talking about it like it's a done deal," she said. But I overheard her telling Mom she hasn't signed anything yet. Said the deposit is a lot and she's waiting for the right time. That was it. The moment the opportunity went from possible to guaranteed. I knew exactly how to move next and how to do it without ever having to be the bad guy on paper. The only thing left was timing it perfectly so that when the trap closed, they'd have no way to back out without losing face. And as luck would have it, an even bigger chance to twist the knife was just around the corner. One that would make the sting unforgettable. 2 weeks later, the opportunity presented itself so cleanly it felt like the universe had gift-wrapped it for me. I was at the venue for a quick meeting with the owner, Martin, to finalize some design tweaks for his spring campaign. As we were wrapping up, he mentioned offhand, "By the way, I've had a lot of inquiries for summer weekends, especially August. People are scrambling to book." That was all I needed to hear. Melissa's anniversary party was planned for late August. If I wanted to, I could quietly make sure that weekend wasn't available by the time she got around to committing. And better yet, I could do it in a way that was completely above board. Actually, I said casually, Emma and I were thinking of hosting a big event later this summer, sort of a delayed thank you party for everyone who supported us last year. Could be a great way to showcase the venue, too. August might be perfect if you've got space. Martin didn't even hesitate. For you? Absolutely. What date? I named the exact weekend Melissa had been bragging about. He pulled up the calendar, penciled me in, and within 5 minutes, the contract was signed. Deposit paid. Done. I didn't tell anyone. Certainly not Sarah. This wasn't the kind of thing you risk leaking. Instead, I began planning the event for real. Emma loved the idea. She'd been wanting to throw a large get-together anyway, something bigger than our usual dinner parties. We decided to make it a semi-formal evening with live music, incredible food, and a guest list that mixed our friends, business contacts, and some of the most influential people we'd met over the past year. Over the next few weeks, I quietly made sure the right people knew about it. Not in a showy way, just a passing mention at other events. A save-the-date sent to a few strategic attendees who I knew also happened to be on Melissa's target guest list. Word travels fast in this city, especially when it's about something new and exclusive. Sure enough, about a month before her party date, Sarah called me, trying to keep her voice low. So, Melissa just found out the venue's booked that weekend. She's furious. Apparently, they told her it's been reserved for months and there's no way to move it. I could almost hear the sound of her pride cracking. Did she say what she's going to do? I asked, keeping my tone light. She's scrambling to find a new location, but everywhere decent is either booked or way out of her budget. And Mom is livid. She's saying whoever booked it must have known. I didn't confirm or deny anything, just chuckled and said, "That's rough. Hope she figures something out." A week later, I started sending out our formal invitations. Sleek black envelopes with gold lettering, each one promising an unforgettable evening at one of the city's most sought-after venues. Emma and I had decided to go all out. Top-tier catering, a jazz quartet, a champagne bar. And here's where the real sting came in. The invite list was so overlapping with Melissa's that I knew the comparisons would be inevitable. Sure enough, word got back to me within days. Guests who'd already RSVP'd to Melissa's vow renewal started politely declining her backup plan location, a bland banquet hall on the edge of town, and telling her they'd already committed to another event. By the time August rolled around, Melissa's once-in-a-lifetime party had been reduced to a half-empty gathering, while ours was a packed, glittering success. I didn't have to say a word about it to her. She knew. My mom knew. Everyone in the family knew. And the best part? I'd never lied, never confronted them, never even mentioned the booking. I'd simply moved first. The look on their faces when they eventually saw the photos from that night was going to be worth every ounce of patience I poured into the plan. The night of our event felt like the culmination of everything Emma and I had worked toward. Not just in the last year, but in our entire journey together. The venue glowed under warm lighting. The air was filled with the hum of conversation and music. And everywhere I looked, people were laughing, toasting, connecting. It wasn't just a party. It was a statement. The kind my family could never rewrite or diminish. We didn't mention Melissa or my mom all night. We didn't need to. The guest list spoke for itself. Local business owners, city officials, a few well-known personalities, and plenty of friends who had stood by us. Every detail, from the signature cocktails to the dessert table, had been chosen with care. It was the kind of night that left people saying, "This is one to remember." And then, like clockwork, the fallout started trickling in. The next morning, Sarah sent me a text. "You should have seen Melissa's face when people at her party kept leaving early. By the time she cut the cake, half the tables were empty." Apparently, several of her must-have guests had only shown up to her backup venue long enough to be polite before heading across town to ours. A few even posted photos from both events in the same night. Ours looking elegant and lively, hers looking sparse and awkward. My mom tried to save face. She posted one blurry group shot from Melissa's party with the caption, "Family first always." But the comments betrayed the truth. People were asking why they hadn't been invited to ours, or remarking on how amazing it looked from the photos they'd seen online. One comment even read, "Looks like you picked the wrong party." Melissa didn't reply, but she quietly untagged herself from several of those posts. Over the next few weeks, the tension was palpable. My mom called once, her voice tight, and said, "You know, you really blindsided your sister with that event." I simply replied, "Funny. I thought you said life doesn't revolve around one person's plans." There was a long silence before she muttered something about being busy and hung up. Melissa hasn't spoken to me directly since. From what Sarah tells me, she's still complaining to anyone who will listen about how petty it was for me to book the venue. But every time she tells the story, she has to admit that she never locked it down in the first place. That detail makes her look less like a victim and more like someone who underestimated the very person she tried to humiliate. And me? I didn't gloat. I didn't throw their absence from my wedding back in their faces. I just kept living my life, thriving in the space they once thought I couldn't survive without them. Because the truth is, revenge wasn't about making them suffer in the moment. It was about showing them, without a single heated word, that I didn't need them to define my worth. They taught me that family could choose to exclude you. I taught them that I could choose to do the same. Now on to the next story. Story 5. A week before my parents' anniversary, Mom handed me a binder. "You'll decorate, serve, clean, and smile. Don't embarrass us." My sister laughed. "Free labor always shows up." I nodded. That night, I canceled every catering order and left. When 68 guests arrived to bare tables, panic spread, and then my parents' phones buzzed. I finally did it. I ruined their anniversary. 68 people were invited. Tables set for a catered dinner, drinks, speeches, a slideshow. They planned it like it was a wedding down to the minute. But when they walked into the house that night, fresh from a 2-day spa retreat, hair blown out, suits pressed, they found nothing. No guests, no food, no music. Just an empty living room and a binder sitting on the table right where they left it. My phone call came 5 minutes later. I let it ring once and then answered. I said, "I hope you're having a relaxing night. There's no party." "You're welcome." Then I hung up. Now I'm sitting in my friend Miles's spare room, eating takeout and watching a dumb action movie. And it's the first time I felt human in 3 months. It started when I moved back in with them just for a little while. I was in a tight spot. Rent prices shot up out of nowhere and some freelance work fell through. I asked if I could stay for a bit, just until I got on my feet. They said, "Of course." They made it sound like they were happy to help. But right after I moved in, it started. I bought groceries once. Then it became every time. I paid one utility bill because it was overdue. Then I was covering all of them. I offered to clean the kitchen after dinner. And the next week, I was vacuuming the whole house while they watched golf and asked when I was going to start contributing more. They never said, "Thank you." They never asked. It was always assumed. My mom started calling me "our little helper" in front of guests. My dad joked about me being the live-in butler. I laughed along. What else was I supposed to do? I was broke and tired and trying to keep peace. I even drove my sister to her laser hair removal appointments because her husband was too busy and she didn't like taking Uber. Then one night, exactly 7 days before their big anniversary bash, Mom handed me a binder. It wasn't a joke. She said, "This is everything you need for the party. You'll decorate, serve, clean, and smile. Don't embarrass us." I flipped through it. There were tabs, timelines, and instructions for how to arrange the dessert table. A note reminding me not to wear jeans. No, please. No, thank you. Just expectations. My brother, who wasn't doing anything to help, laughed and said, "Free labor always shows up." I didn't say anything, just nodded. But that night, I sat down at the kitchen table, opened every catering app and website they'd used, and canceled everything. Every tray of canapes, every seafood tower, every vegan option. Gone. I logged out of their accounts, deleted my browser history, and packed a bag. Then I called Miles and asked if his offer still stood. It did. He said, "Just let me know when." The next morning, my family left for their spa weekend. My mom texted a to-do list before they drove off. I didn't read it. Instead, I packed the rest of my stuff, cleaned only my own mess, and left the binder with a sticky note that said, "Good luck." Then I left. I didn't turn off my phone until after I made the call and told them the party was off. After that, I went offline completely. That was just the beginning. By the time I woke up the next morning, my phone looked like it had been in a war zone. 17 missed calls, 8 voicemails, 24 texts, all from the same 3 people. Mom, Dad, my sister Lauren. Even a couple from unknown numbers, probably guests confused about whether the party had moved or if someone had died. I ignored all of it, let the notifications stack while I made eggs in Miles's kitchen, and watched him rant at his Xbox. I wasn't going to ruin my morning over a mess they created for themselves. I checked social media just out of curiosity. That's where the real damage was happening. One of my cousins had posted a photo of the party that wasn't. Just the empty living room with chairs pushed against the walls and that stupid binder sitting perfectly centered on the dining table. No food, no drinks, no music. Just silence and bad lighting. Her caption was, "Is this a scavenger hunt?" Another relative commented, "I thought we were early." Someone else, "Waited for 45 minutes and just left. So awkward." By noon, the post disappeared, but not before it made the rounds. Screenshots landed in family group chats. People started texting each other, and the story started to unravel. First, they thought it was a mistake, then a scheduling issue. Then they realized something had gone wrong. Very wrong. That's when the real messages started pouring in. Mom texted, "I cannot believe you would do this. Your father is humiliated. I hope you're proud." Then another one 5 minutes later. "After all we've done for you, we trusted you. This was our night." And then a string of increasingly unhinged ones. People left without even eating. I'm getting calls from everyone asking what happened. "Are you serious, Peter?" Dad finally chimed in, too, of course. "This is low even for you." Followed by, "You think this is funny? You've made a real mess." Then came Lauren. "You are dead to Mom and Dad. Do you even care how selfish this was?" That one made me laugh. Dead to them. Good. That meant I was finally free. I sent a single message back. Just one. "Don't contact me unless it's about the box in the garage. I'm not coming back." No emojis, no explanation. Just facts. Then I muted all 3 of them. I spent the rest of that day catching up on freelance edits, ate lunch with Miles, and even helped him set up a camera rig for a stupid short film he was working on. It was one of the most peaceful days I'd had in months. And still, they kept trying to reach me. I got emails, Facebook DMs, even a message from some woman I didn't know who turned out to be a family friend that Mom must have sent to talk some sense into me. I didn't answer anyone. What they couldn't accept, what they refused to believe, was that I wasn't the same guy they had pushed around for 3 months. I wasn't the one folding laundry at midnight or driving across town to pick up someone else's dry cleaning just because I wasn't working a real job. What they didn't know was that for weeks I'd been setting up my own thing in the background. Video editing gigs, branding consultations, social content packages for a couple of mid-size influencers. It wasn't much yet, but the money had started coming in. I had a plan. I wasn't going back. They thought I needed them. They didn't realize I was already gone. And what happened that night? Ruining their perfect evening. Turning their big event into a memory they never want to talk about again. Wasn't an accident. It was the first time I chose myself. But the fallout had just started. I had no idea how far they'd go to get control back. By Tuesday morning, the guilt trip had fully evolved into blackmail. The first email hit my inbox around 8:15 a.m. while I was sitting on the floor of Miles's place, drinking instant coffee and editing a product video for a pet brand. Subject line in all caps, "UOUS and apology." I opened it without even blinking. I knew exactly what it was. It was from my dad, and it read like a script from a bad courtroom drama. He started with a list. "We gave you a place to stay. We put a roof over your head. We never asked for anything in return. We trusted you." Then came the pivot. He said if I didn't return immediately and make this right, they'd be forced to tell the family the truth about my condition. I actually sat there rereading that line, wondering what the hell he meant by condition. He clarified in the next paragraph. He called me mentally unwell, accused me of being in crisis, said I needed help, and they tried to provide it, but I'd rejected it violently. Violently? The most violent thing I'd done was cancel a catering order. Then he wrote something that made me laugh out loud. Peter, if you don't fix this, we'll have no choice but to tell everyone that we tried to stage an intervention and you ran away. An intervention for refusing to be their unpaid housekeeper. I didn't respond, so my mom doubled down. She texted, "We've supported you through every setback. Please don't destroy your reputation over something this petty." Then, people are starting to ask questions. What do you want us to say? And finally, you'll regret this. Maybe not now, but when it's too late. Then Lauren jumped in, texting me a screenshot of some Facebook message from one of our cousins saying, "Was that party thing a prank or something?" She added, "They think you're losing it. You happy?" I didn't reply, not to any of them, so they escalated again. Another email, this time from my dad with attached screenshots. Bank transfers, utility payments, grocery delivery receipts, all from me to them over the past 3 months. He highlighted the amounts with notes like, "This was your contribution, and you chose to cover this." At the bottom, he wrote, "You paid these while living in our home. These were not gifts. We expect reimbursement for the embarrassment you caused." That was their new angle. They were going to take the money I spent helping them and twist it into some kind of debt I owed them. Frame it like I'd lived rent-free and freeloaded and now needed to make up for it by apologizing publicly. Or they'd go to the rest of the family and trash my name. I almost replied. Almost. But I closed my laptop instead and walked outside. Miles was already on the porch with a bagel and a Red Bull. I told him what they sent. He just shook his head and said, "They're never getting you back, are they?" I told him, "Not a chance." Later that night, another voicemail came in from Mom. 5 minutes long. She sounded calmer this time, more controlled, but that made it worse. She said they were discussing legal options. Said they might involve a lawyer if I didn't return the money I owe them. And then this line, "You still have some things in the garage. If you don't come for them soon, we'll assume you no longer want them." Miles listened to it with me and laughed. "They're threatening to keep your childhood soccer trophies?" I said, "They can set them on fire." The next morning, they tried one more move. They showed up, all 3 of them, dressed like they came from brunch, standing outside Miles's place, ringing the bell like they just dropped by for a casual chat. And that's where part 4 begins. They showed up on a Thursday afternoon like it was some kind of intervention-themed field trip. I was halfway through editing a skincare demo video when Miles came into the room with a look that said, "You're going to want to see this." I followed him to the front window. There they were. Mom in a white blouse and massive sunglasses, like she was trying to look elegant for a Netflix documentary. Dad standing stiff in a blazer he only ever wore to church and bad weddings. And Lauren, arms crossed, chewing gum with the same condescending smirk she used to wear in high school when she thought she was above everyone else. They were parked at the curb, the car still running. At first, I thought they were here to drop off the box from the garage. Maybe, just maybe, some attempt at being civil. But then the passenger door opened and Lauren stepped out with that practiced, "I'm not here to fight" body language that always meant she was here to fight. I told Miles flatly, "Don't let them in." He didn't even blink, just walked outside and shut the door behind him. I stayed inside, out of sight, but I could hear parts of the conversation through the cracked window. Miles said, "He's not coming out. He's not interested in talking. You need to go." My mom immediately started pleading. Her voice went soft like it always did when she was trying to manipulate someone she thought was emotionally weaker. She said things like, "We just want to talk," and "This isn't how families should treat each other." Then my dad stepped in with a louder, more theatrical approach. He started lecturing Miles like he was the problem. He said things like, "You're enabling him, and you don't understand the damage he's done." Miles responded, calm as ever, "You're trespassing. You need to leave." And then Lauren laughed. Wow, he's got you brainwashed too. Right then, 2 more cars pulled up. That's when I realized this wasn't just a pop-in visit. They brought people. The first car had Uncle David in it, who I hadn't seen in maybe 5 years. The last time was a Thanksgiving where he got drunk and told me I'd never make money on the internet. The second car had Marlene, a distant cousin who once messaged me on LinkedIn to ask if I could make her son go viral. I could see the plan now. They were staging a rescue mission, something between a family ambush and an image rehab campaign. If they couldn't control me, they'd overwhelm me, drag me back by sheer numbers and social pressure. Like if enough people showed up, I'd feel like the villain, fold, apologize, and fall back into the mold. I didn't move. I didn't even flinch. I just pulled out my phone and hit record. Meanwhile, Miles stepped out onto the porch again and raised his voice just enough to carry. "You've got 5 minutes to leave before I call the cops," he said. "And just so we're clear, this whole thing is being recorded now. Every face, every word." They hesitated. Dad tried to argue, saying something about how this was a family matter, not a police matter. He said Miles was interfering in something he didn't understand. Miles shrugged. "You brought a crowd to someone's house uninvited. I understand enough." Then he added just loud enough, "You try to force your way in, it becomes a legal issue." The tension broke there. No one wanted to be the one who ended up on some viral TikTok labeled, "Entitled Boomers Try to Reclaim Adult Son." Uncle David turned around and got back in his car. Marlene mumbled something about how she didn't sign up for this. Lauren rolled her eyes and followed them. Mom stayed the longest, just standing there clutching her purse like it was her last chance to fix things. But she didn't say anything, not a word. Then she left too. And just like that, they were gone. No shouting, no apology, no big dramatic scene. Just silence and a very expensive failure of a confrontation. But the part that hit me hardest wasn't the circus in the front yard. It was what Miles said when he came back inside. He sat down next to me, took a sip of his warm Red Bull, and said, "You know you can't stay here much longer, right?" I thought he meant they scared him off, that the scene was too much. But then he said, "Not because of them, because you're ready." It was like someone flipped a switch in my brain. I realized he was right. I didn't need to hide anymore. I didn't need to crash at someone else's place or play small to survive. That part of my life was done. The next morning, I called the landlord I'd been putting off for weeks. By Saturday, I had a lease. But it wasn't just a move. It was the beginning of something because the next phase was mine, not theirs. That's what Part 5 is all about. I signed the lease on a cold, gray Saturday morning in an office that smelled like stale coffee and printer ink. The apartment was on the second floor of a lopsided building with uneven stairs and a rusty mailbox that looked like it had been kicked more than opened. I didn't care. When Seth, the landlord, handed me the keys without making small talk, I didn't even flinch. He slid the papers across the counter and said, "You're good." Like he wasn't sure why anyone would rent that place. I knew exactly why. Because it was mine. 1 bedroom, wood floors with decades of scratches. A heater that buzzed like an old fridge. Kitchen light flickered if you looked at it wrong. The bathroom fan sounded like an airplane taking off, and I loved it. There was no folded note on the counter telling me what time to start dinner. No voice calling from another room to ask if I paid the water bill. No reminders. No sighs. No silence loaded with expectations. I closed the door behind me, leaned against it, and just stood there. The quiet wasn't awkward. It wasn't heavy. Felt clean. For the first time in months, maybe years, the air didn't feel owned by someone else. Miles came by later that day with his beat-up truck and my 2 boxes. One had clothes. The other had a mix of random electronics, cords, chargers, notebooks, a dented coffee mug, and an unopened birthday card from a friend I hadn't seen in a year. He also brought pizza, dropped it on the floor like a ritual, and said, "Welcome to your first bad decision made on your own terms." That night, I sat on the floor with no furniture, laptop on a pillow, eating cold pizza while syncing up files for a client's product launch. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't impressive. But it was real. My work started to shift. I was putting out better edits, faster turnarounds. Clients noticed. A few came back with bigger projects. One of them even referred me to a digital marketing firm that needed weekly content for their clients. I didn't feel like I was getting by anymore. I was building something. Finally, every day had a rhythm. Wake up, coffee, emails, edits, proposals, dinner, read, sleep. No one to interrupt. No sudden demands to drive someone across town or scrub a tile floor because company was coming. No last-minute tasks disguised as favors. I was still living off cheap groceries and second-hand furniture listings, but I didn't care. I was broke on my own terms. No one could weaponize it against me. And for a while it was quiet. Almost too quiet. The first 2 weeks passed with nothing from them. No calls, no texts, no emails, not even a passive-aggressive Facebook post. I knew them well enough to know this wasn't surrender. It was strategy. Then late one night, while I was exporting a batch of reels for a startup in Portland, my phone buzzed. Unknown number, no name, no contact photo, one message. Enjoy your little fantasy. We'll see how long it lasts. No punctuation, no name, just that. I stared at it for a long time. Not because it hurt. It didn't. It felt expected, like someone throwing one last punch after the fight was already over. I blocked the number immediately. Didn't respond. Didn't screenshot it. Just let it vanish. But it reminded me of something important. Just because I left their house didn't mean I left the game they were playing. They were quiet, not gone. Watching, not forgetting. They were waiting for me to fail. But they were going to wait a long time because part 6, that's where things start to click. Where the business gets real, where the regret starts creeping in on their side. It's strange how fast things can change when no one's holding you back. 3 months into my new apartment, the business wasn't just working. It was growing. The kind of slow, steady growth you feel in your bones before it shows in your bank account. I picked up more clients through word of mouth. A guy I helped edit a promo video for recommended me to his sister who ran a boutique clothing line. She needed reels, photos, the whole branding package. That led to another referral, then another. Suddenly, I had contracts, retainer clients, weekly schedules, invoices I was actually proud to send. I wasn't hustling just to survive. I was building something with momentum. Real clients, real money, real control over my life. And the best part, no one in my life expected it. I could feel it through the silence. There were no congratulations, no check-ins, no random "we're proud of you" messages. Just silence and the occasional reminder that they were still watching. My old posts, ones that barely got 2 likes, suddenly had views. Story views from names I recognized. My dad's coworker, a family friend from church, an aunt I hadn't heard from since I was a teenager. Then, eventually, Lauren. She viewed every story without fail. Quiet, invisible, but consistent. Then came my mom. She never messaged, never liked anything, just watched. And I let her. It must have killed them to see it happening. Me doing fine, me not begging, me not failing. Because failure, that's what they were counting on. I could picture them telling people I was just going through a phase, or trying something online that probably won't last. I could hear the conversations without even being in the room. They wanted me broke, desperate, out of options. That way, coming back would look like maturity instead of surrender. But I never came back. I upgraded my old desk chair, bought a used couch. A friend helped me find a coffee table someone was giving away on Craigslist. I even bought curtains. They didn't match the walls at all, but I liked them. They were mine. At night, I worked with music playing. Something soft in the background while I edited footage and watched the numbers tick up. Engagement rates, conversion rates, my own balance sheet. One day, out of nowhere, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It just said, "We were trying to help. You chose to walk away." No name, no context. But I knew. I stared at it for a minute, then archived it. Not even worth blocking. Because help isn't control. Help isn't guilt. Help isn't servitude wrapped in a fake smile. What they gave me wasn't help. It was a trap with furniture and meal plans. And I'd escaped it. One day, maybe I'll run into one of them at a store, on the street. Maybe someone will say something like, "You know, your parents still talk about you." And maybe I'll nod, or maybe I'll just walk away. Because that's the part they'll never understand. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about the party, the binder, or even the months I spent being treated like a burden with hands. It was about freedom, and they don't get to be part of it. Not anymore. Now on to the next story. Story 6. They skipped my birthday dinner. Said they got caught up, but used my card for a $1,350 brunch the next morning. Photos posted, "Thanks my name, for always treating us right." I said nothing, froze the tab, reported the fraud, and pulled the loyalty points. An hour later, the restaurant called them. Later, Dad called me. My birthday was on a Sunday this year. I kept the plan simple. Just a small dinner at a local place and some cake afterward. I even made the reservation myself. I sent out the time and address to my parents, my older sister Mia, her husband Ryan, and a couple of cousins. They all said they were coming. No one showed. They didn't even text. Not until almost 10 o'clock that night, when Mia sent a group message saying they were running late and had gotten caught up with something. That was it. No call, no explanation. I waited at that restaurant for over an hour and ended up eating alone. The waitress kept refilling my water with that same polite smile, like she felt sorry for me. I left a good tip anyway. I went home. No one called me. No one showed up with cake. No messages came in at midnight. The next morning, I woke up to a notification from my credit card company about a charge I didn't recognize. $1,350 at a fancy brunch spot in town. I knew immediately what it was. It wasn't even a guess. It was instinct. I opened Instagram. There they were. Mia, Ryan, my parents, and my two cousins sitting at a long outdoor table with champagne glasses raised. Omelets and seafood towers were spread across the table like some hotel buffet in Vegas. The caption under Mia's post said, "Thank you, Jack, for always treating us so well," followed by clinking glasses and a sparkling heart. Best brother ever. I didn't comment. I didn't text them. I just blocked her account. I reported the charges as fraud. And while I was on the phone with the bank, I also canceled the bonus points. It felt stupidly satisfying to know they wouldn't even get their airline miles out of it. About an hour later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. The message was from a manager at the restaurant where they'd eaten, saying the card had been flagged and I needed to call them back. A minute later, my dad called. That one I answered. I figured I might as well. He didn't say hello. Just started in on how embarrassing it was to have the cops show up at a restaurant over a family misunderstanding. How I blew things out of proportion. How I owed them an apology for making them look bad. I didn't argue. I just asked calmly for my card back and told him they needed to return the $1,350 they spent. I also mentioned I'd filed a police report. He laughed and said, "You wouldn't dare." By 4 p.m., a patrol car pulled up outside my parents' place. I wasn't there, but my neighbors sent me a video. My mom handed my card to the officer and wrote me a check. I cashed it the same day. That night, I got added to a new group chat called Family Talk. The first message was from Mia. It said, "Hope you're happy, Jack." What came next wasn't quiet. The next morning, after the refund and the blocked accounts, I drove over to my parents' place. I wasn't planning some confrontation. I just needed to pick up a box of old tools I'd left in the garage months ago. I didn't even think they'd be home. They were. Not only were my parents there, but so were Mia and Ryan, Uncle Pete and Laura, Jason and Elle. It looked like they'd gathered to discuss a hostage situation. I walked in, and the whole room went quiet like I just interrupted a eulogy. My dad was sitting on the recliner like a king on his throne, beer in hand, while the others sat around the coffee table, faces stiff and smug. Nobody said hi. Nobody offered a seat. "Look who finally decided to show up," my dad said. "We were just talking about you." I didn't respond, just asked where the box was. My mom pointed toward the garage. She didn't say anything either. She looked at me, then looked away just as quickly. I went to get the tools, trying to pretend I didn't hear the whispered comments coming from the living room. "He went crying to the cops over brunch," Ryan said. "Imagine embarrassing your family like that," Mia added. "He's always had that victim complex." Then Pete chimed in with something about how some kids just grow up soft. I knew they wanted me to react. They wanted a scene. I didn't give them one. As I came back through the house with the box in my arms, Jason met my eyes. We were close once, used to share everything. He looked down and started scrolling through his phone like I wasn't even there. Elle didn't even bother pretending. I paused at the door, thinking I might say something, anything. But what was the point? They'd already made it clear I was no longer part of the inner circle. Maybe I never was. I left without a word. Back home, I blocked a few more numbers. The new group chat Mia had made, Family Talk, was just a collection of passive-aggressive jabs and inside jokes clearly meant to exclude me. I didn't respond once. 8 days passed. It was a Thursday afternoon when my phone buzzed with a call from my dad. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me, so I let it go to voicemail. He sounded strained, tense. Said his car had broken down, the alternator or something more serious, and the repair bill came to over $1,200. He needed $900, just a short loan, just until things got sorted. He said he knew he could count on me. That was how he phrased it. I know I can count on you, Jack. That one sentence hit me harder than all the insults. I waited about 15 minutes before calling him back. He picked up fast, like he'd been sitting there staring at the phone. I said, "No, just that. Nothing else." There was a long pause. Then he hung up. No shouting, no bargaining, no guilt-tripping. It was almost disappointing how quiet it was. But that silence said everything. And that was the moment I realized I wasn't just outside the family anymore. I was finally free from it. 3 days after my dad's call, I got a voicemail from my mom. She never used to call me much, just forwarded memes or sent a text on holidays. But this time she called twice in one day. The message wasn't angry. She sounded measured, maybe even rehearsed. She said they'd been dealing with a lot lately, and she hoped I wasn't taking things too personally. She said, maybe I didn't need to cover the full $900. Maybe $400 or $500 would help. She ended it with, "We're still family, Jack." I sat on that message for a few hours, then called her back. She picked up immediately, said she was glad I called. I told her calmly that I wasn't lending anyone money. I said it without attitude, without any smugness, just a straight fact. She didn't argue. She paused, said she understood, then hung up. I expected that to be the end of it, but the next day the group chat lit up again. This time, Ryan kicked it off. Family really means nothing to some people. Then, Mia, Jack's busy being a victim. Must be exhausting. Jason followed with, some people act like they're above it all until it's time to do something real. Even Elle joined in, which surprised me. She was never as loud as the rest of them. Guess Jack forgot where he came from. Still, I didn't respond. I left the chat open and muted like a fire I refused to put out but wanted to watch burn. The messages weren't really about me anymore. They were about them panicking, losing control of the one person who never fought back. On Saturday, I heard a knock at my door. I looked through the peephole and saw my dad standing there. No warning, just showed up. I stood there watching him for a bit. He knocked again. Didn't shout, didn't bang. Just stood there like he was waiting for a taxi that wouldn't come. Then he reached into his back pocket and slid something under the door. It was a piece of paper. After he left, I unfolded it. It was a repair estimate from a mechanic shop. $1,215 total. A red pen circled the line that said, parts and labor, $897. No note, just the receipt. I left it on the kitchen counter and went about my day. The next day, my mom came by. She didn't knock. She called from the parking lot and asked if I could come down. She said she just wanted to talk. I waited a few minutes before walking out. She was standing next to her car, looking small in the middle of the lot. She asked how I was doing. I said fine. Then she asked why I was acting so cold and cutting off the people who love me. She said I was making things worse by holding on to something that didn't need to go this far. I asked her what exactly I was holding on to. Was it the stolen birthday, the fraudulent charge, the group chat jokes, or maybe the part where she stood there and let them all gang up on me without saying a word? She looked down, said it wasn't like that. I told her I wasn't angry. I just finally stopped pretending everything was okay. She asked if I'd at least think about coming to dinner next week. She promised it would be calm. No drama, just food and talking. I said I'd think about it. She drove off a few minutes later. I already knew the answer. I wasn't going. This wasn't silence anymore. This was distance. And I was finally starting to breathe. 3 days after that last talk in the parking lot, another invitation came. Not a call this time, not a text. It was a card slipped directly into my mailbox. No envelope, no stamp, just folded paper with my name, written across the front in my mom's careful cursive. Inside, in blue ink, she wrote, "Dinner Sunday at 6 p.m. We all miss you. Let's start fresh. Please come. Love, Mom." She added a little heart under her name like she used to when I was a kid, and she packed notes in my school lunches. I stared at it for a while, trying to decide what I wanted it to mean. For a moment I thought maybe they had figured it out. Maybe there was a shred of remorse. Maybe they finally realized how ugly all of it had been. So I didn't respond. I didn't send a message or call. I just waited. Sunday came, and all day I debated whether I should go. At 5:45 I got in the car without really deciding to. I didn't even know if I was going to knock, but something in me needed to see what this was, whether it was a peace offering or something else. I pulled up to the house at 5:58. The driveway was full. Mia's SUV, Ryan's truck, Jason's new car, even Uncle Pete's Buick parked at an angle like he couldn't be bothered to fit between the lines. The porch lights were on, and I could hear music playing inside. I walked up the steps and rang the doorbell. Nothing. I waited, then rang again. Still nothing. I tried the doorknob. Locked. I knocked. No answer. After another minute or two, I pulled out my phone and texted my mom, "I'm here." I watched the screen. The message said, "Delivered." No reply. I stood there for a while, then walked around the side of the house. Through the kitchen window I could see them. All of them sitting around the table laughing. Plates passed between hands, wine glasses raised. Ryan was talking with his mouth full, like always. Mia was cutting something and waving a fork at Jason. Everyone was there. Everyone but me. They hadn't forgotten. They knew I was coming. They'd locked the door on purpose. The entire thing, the invitation, the note, was a game, a trap to make me show up and leave me standing outside like a joke they could all be in on together. I stayed there for a few seconds watching through the glass. Then I turned around and walked back to my car. I didn't knock again. I didn't text. I didn't drive off angry. I drove off with a strange calm I hadn't felt in weeks. They wanted to make a point. Fine. Message received. The next morning I opened Instagram. Jason had posted a picture of the dinner table. Everyone raising glasses, smiling wide. The caption read, "Family is everything. The real ones show up." No one tagged me, but they didn't have to. That same day, I pulled the trigger on the one thing I knew would drive them mad. I updated my bank account information to a new card, changed every single password tied to old family access points. Streaming logins, shared subscriptions, the Costco membership under my name. I canceled the Netflix account I'd been paying for since college, the one Mia, Ryan, Jason, Elle, and my parents all still used. The group chat exploded that afternoon. Ryan, "Why is the Netflix down?" Mia, "Jack, seriously, this is childish." Jason, "You're a joke, dude." My dad didn't message. He called. I didn't answer. They made it clear they didn't want me at the table. So, I started pulling the chairs out from under them one by one, quietly, neatly. No shouting, no speeches. I wasn't at war. I was just cleaning house. 2 days after I quietly cut off the family from everything I was still paying for, Netflix, Hulu, Spotify, the Costco membership no one had ever offered to pitch in for, my phone lit up like a slot machine at 3 a.m. Over 40 notifications. Not from the group chat, though. I'd silenced that graveyard a while ago. These were direct messages. Mia, Ryan, Elle, even my mom. Each one hitting a different tone like they were all assigned roles in a badly written play. Mia led with guilt. "Jack, are you seriously taking things this far? Over one dinner." Ryan, as always, chose mockery. "King Petty strikes again. Hope the $15 you saved was worth it." Elle surprised me. She tried kindness. You don't have to freeze everyone out, Jack. You made your point. Let's just stop. My mom kept it short. Call me when you're ready to act like family again. None of it fazed me anymore. I'd realized something. They only reached out when I stopped giving. That was the only language they understood. Access. When it was gone, they noticed. But the real shock came later that afternoon. I was sorting through spam emails when a message pinged through on Facebook from someone named Danielle M. The name didn't register at first, but I clicked anyway. Her profile was quiet, almost bare, just a few photos. A woman in her mid-30s with a kind face and a little boy in nearly every picture. Maybe 5 or 6. Big brown eyes, curly hair, a bright red backpack in one photo with his name written on the flap. Noah. Then I saw it. One of the older photos was a wedding picture. Jason's wedding. Danielle was his ex-wife. Her message said, "Hi, Jack. I know this is weird and I hope I'm not crossing a line, but I saw the comments on your cousin's post and I just want to say you're not crazy. You're not wrong. They protect each other no matter who gets hurt." That alone made my chest tighten, but it didn't stop there. I responded, "What do you mean?" What followed over the next hour was a steady drip of screenshots, emails, and legal letters. Danielle told me Jason hadn't seen Noah in almost a year. No birthday calls, no visits, no child support paid since October. She'd gone through the courts, tried everything. She sent me a PDF of the official notice where he was warned his wages would be garnished. Then she told me something that flipped the whole table. "I called your mom last year when Jason vanished. She answered, told me to stop making things worse. Said Jason was going through a lot and bringing money into it was disrespectful." Then she hung up. My mom. The same mom who begged me to come to dinner, who said we should start fresh, who locked the door when I showed up. I thanked Danielle, told her I was sorry, even though none of it was technically my fault. Then I did what none of them ever expected me to do. I filed an anonymous complaint with the Department of Child Support Enforcement. I attached Danielle's court documents and Jason's employer info, which I still had because he once used my email to apply for a car loan. By Monday morning, it had begun. Jason's accounts got flagged. His bank froze transfers. The dealership called him about a delayed payment. He got a letter from the state, and because it was legally tied to Danielle's active case, it wasn't something he could ignore or yell his way out of. That night, Uncle Pete called me. First time in years. "Whatever you did, undo it. Right now." I asked what he meant. Jason's life is being torn apart. Frozen cards, threats from the state. "You started this." I said, "No, Jason started it. I just ended the silence." He tried to shift gears. "You think you're above us now?" I said, "I don't think about you at all." Then I hung up. No screaming, no revenge speech, just quiet, deliberate consequence. And when I logged into the group chat later out of pure curiosity, I saw something new. Not insults, just silence. After the state got involved with Jason, everything went quiet. Too quiet. No one texted. No one called, not even Mia. And that alone was enough to raise suspicion. Silence had never been their thing. They were loud, reactive, dramatic. If they weren't yelling, they were whispering loudly enough to be heard. So I waited. The quiet lasted just under 2 weeks. Then, strange things started happening. First was an email from a freelance designer. She thanked me for choosing her to develop my business site and said she was happy with the 50% deposit and looking forward to delivering the first draft of mievento.com. The logo mockup was attached. I stared at the invoice for a full minute. The card number she charged was one I hadn't used in over a year. A card I had once temporarily linked to my old Apple ID on the family laptop back when I lived at home and we all shared one device in the kitchen. I had removed the card, wiped my login, but I'd clearly left something behind. Something Mia found. She'd used my name and email to commission the site, signed it Jack B. I didn't lose it. I reported the charge, called the designer, and explained calmly that the work was requested under false information. I apologized, told her it wasn't her fault, and she wouldn't be paid for anything unless she could bill Mia directly. She understood. That was the easy part. Then came the job reference. An old boss I hadn't spoken to in 5 years reached out through LinkedIn. Said he got a call from someone asking about me. A man said he worked in compliance and needed to confirm details about my employment history. The boss said it seemed off and wanted to let me know. I knew who it was. Ryan. He never liked how I left the family business cleanly, how I managed to carve something out without needing any of them. So now he was planting whispers, trying to make something stick in places I'd worked hard to build up. Again, I didn't react. I didn't text him. I didn't bring it up in the group chat that was still there, still muted, still buzzing every few days with carefully staged photos of fake smiles and filtered Sunday brunches. But I did something else. I started documenting every false charge, every anonymous call, every attempt to use my name, my identity, my history. I saved screenshots. I created a file. Not because I wanted to sue them, not yet, but because I knew what they were really doing. They weren't trying to get back at me. They were trying to build a version of me. A distorted copy. The angry one, the vengeful one, the liar, the unstable brother who went too far. They were laying the groundwork for their defense just in case this ever blew open. Just in case anyone asked them later, what happened with Jack? They wanted a version they could control. So I stayed quiet, but I made moves they didn't know about. I met with someone, a friend of a friend, a professional. Someone who deals in reputational cleanup, digital footprints, and legal preemptives. She told me to gather everything. Every piece, every voice memo, every recorded call, every email I could forward. She said, "You're building a wall. Don't fire. Fortify." That's what I'm doing now. But I've also started something else. Something they haven't figured out yet. Something outside their control. It's not legal action, not directly. It's not public exposure. It's quieter than that, more personal. Something that presses right against the thin surface of their perfect little image without ever cracking it. Until it does. They think I'm waiting for peace. They think I'm still hurt. They think I'm done. They have no idea I've barely started. And when I come back to tell you what happened, how it all unfolded, how it all finally came to the surface, I promise it'll be worth reading. Because some families only understand the fire once it's already in the house. Update. Weeks passed quietly, on the surface at least. The group chat stayed silent. The social media jabs stopped. Not a word from Mia, Ryan, or Jason. Even my mom's usual forwarded prayers and dog memes disappeared. At first, it seemed like peace, but I know my family better than that. It wasn't peace. It was recalibration. Then one Sunday afternoon, I saw it. A story tagged by one of Mia's friends. My family seated neatly in a church pew, hands folded, all smiles. The caption read, "Faith, forgiveness, unity." Nothing more powerful. That wasn't a photo. It was a message. A few days later, I got home from work and found something slid under my apartment door. An envelope, thin, formal. Inside were volunteer forms for a local charity dinner, one that my mom used to drag me to every year when I was younger. This one was signed. In her handwriting, at the bottom of the waiver, she'd written, "Please come back, son." No explanation, no apology, just that. I didn't reply. I didn't even move the forms off my kitchen counter. They're still sitting there, gathering dust under a coffee mug. But last night, things changed again. At 2:14 a.m., I got a text from an unknown number. It wasn't one of their voices. No emojis. No guilt. Just a plain message. "Meet me at 7:30. Coffee shop on Pine. I have something you need to see." No name, no clue who it came from. Just the kind of message that makes your pulse quicken for no logical reason. I thought about ignoring it. Then I thought about everything they've done, what they've tried, what they're capable of, and curiosity won. So yes, I'm going tomorrow night. I'll walk into that cafe alone. I don't know what's waiting for me. Could be nothing, could be everything. But whatever happens, I'll be back here to tell you. And if what's waiting there is what I think it is, then this story is about to open a brand new chapter. Now on to the next story. Story 7. This loser needs to be kicked out, stepdad told my mom while I was overhearing them. Last week, he kicked me out. I asked mom why she let him do it, but she was silent, so I left. But yesterday, stepdad begged me not to tell my mom the truth. And today I live in Dayton, Ohio. Pretty average place, decent mix of things to do, but nothing wild. My mom's house is in a quiet part of town about 30 minutes from Springfield, which comes up later in this whole mess. Anyway, that house stopped feeling like home a long time ago. I've been dying to get this story off my chest. So here it is. My stepdad, his real name is Tom, but I've always called him Stepdad Tom. I started doing it as a joke because my mom wanted me to call him Dad when they first got married, but I refused. It stuck. He hated it, which made it even better. Tom came into our lives about 3 years after my real dad died. It was a sudden heart attack. Mom was a wreck, and for a while I didn't blame her for trying to move on. But then she brought him into our lives and it all went downhill from there. The guy moved in with his 15-year-old daughter, Ashley, and turned our house into his little kingdom. Ashley could do whatever she wanted. I couldn't even eat food from the fridge without asking. This hell lasted almost a year. Stepfather Tom had rules for everything. No friends over, no noise after 8 o'clock, no locking my door. He walked around like he owned the place even though he was living off my mom's salary. She works in tech, makes good money, and somehow he managed to suck her into his little fantasy of a blended family where he was in charge. I held it together as long as I could. I went to college nearby to get some space, but came home on weekends when I could stand it. A week ago, something happened that finally turned everything upside down. I had a class canceled at the last minute, so I left campus earlier than usual. I didn't tell anyone I was coming home early. I thought I could just crash and catch up on sleep, but when I opened the front door, I heard voices, quiet but serious. I didn't barge in. I stood in the hallway, completely still. It was Stepdad Tom talking to my mom. He said, "This loser needs to be kicked out." Just like that, like I was a stray dog. My mom didn't react at first. It was quiet for a second. Then she said something I couldn't quite make out. And Tom snapped again, saying he was tired of me being there, that I was draining the energy of the house. I could tell that Mom wasn't completely on board, but she wasn't pushing back either. That was enough for me. I left the house without her hearing me. I drove around for a couple of hours, grabbed something from Taco Bell, got a little drunk with a friend, and came home later that night. Didn't say a word, just went straight to bed. The next morning, it all exploded. Tom came into my room and told me to get my stuff together. No discussion. I asked Mom why she let him do this to me, and she just stood there. Didn't defend me. Didn't even look me in the eye. Ashley, his daughter, was sitting at the kitchen table when I left, smiling. She made some messed up comment about me being a failed college dropout. I snapped and told her to shut up. Tom lost it. He started yelling, threatening, pointing at the door. I packed in silence. Took me about an hour. Then I left. I went straight to my dad's sister, Aunt Karen. She's always had my back, even when things got messy after the funeral. When I told her what had happened, she was furious. I also told her something I hadn't told anyone else. Why I thought Tom really wanted me out. He caught me a couple of weeks ago. I was at a gas station outside of Springfield and I saw him. He was with someone who was definitely not my mother. Some blonde woman, younger, laughing and holding his hand. Tom saw me seeing him. He froze and I just walked away. Didn't say anything, but he knew that was the real reason he wanted me gone. I was a threat, and Karen didn't hold back. She called my mom right in front of me, told her she was an idiot for letting a loser kick her own son out of his house, and hung up. I took the phone away from her before she could say anything else. I wasn't ready to go nuclear yet. Tom had threatened me before and I knew he'd do it again. Karen calmed down, but then she looked at me and said, "How often do you think he sees her?" She told me to find out. Yesterday I did. After that phone call with my mom where Aunt Karen called her stupid and hung up, I started thinking about everything that had happened since Tom moved in. It wasn't just the rules or the power trips. It was the way he rewired everything in the house to revolve around him. Like how we stopped having Sunday breakfast because he wanted quiet mornings, or how Mom started dressing more conservatively because he didn't like other men looking at her. Everything was changing, slowly but completely. And now he was cheating on her with some random woman while pretending to be some kind of moral compass. That's why I wanted proof. And Karen didn't need much convincing. She looked me straight in the eye and said, "He's going to keep doing this until someone stops him. That somebody's going to be you." So that was the plan. I was going to catch him red-handed, and I was going to make it stick. Yesterday, I left Dayton around 2 p.m. and drove to Springfield. The two cities are close, same kind of working-class vibe. But Springfield is a little quieter, the kind of place people go when they want to get away for a few hours. I had a feeling I'd find him in the same place I'd seen him before, a little hotel on Limestone Street. Cheap enough to pay cash, quiet enough not to ask questions. I parked behind a Subway across the street and waited. I had snacks, my phone fully charged, and a long playlist to pass the time. I felt like an underpaid private investigator on a bad TV show, but I kept watching. Around 3:30, he showed up in Mom's silver CRV. This one hit harder than I expected. The same car she used to take me to doctor's appointments or pick me up from school when I forgot my trombone in 5th grade. And here he was using it to cheat on her, parked like he'd done it 100 times. He got out wearing the same beige hoodie he always wears when he's pretending to be invisible. Then, not even 5 minutes later, she drove up. The same woman I'd seen before. Short blonde hair, tight jeans, red sweater. She had this bounce in her step, like this was some kind of date she'd been looking forward to all week. Tom lit up when he saw her. He walked over and kissed her like he hadn't seen her in months. It wasn't a side hug or a sneaky glance. This was bold. They held hands and walked right into the hotel like they didn't care. I have the whole thing, photos, video. I stayed across the street, out of sight, but close enough to get it all. I zoomed in, got them at the door, laughing, her hand on his back, his arm around her waist. They went in and didn't come out. I stayed there for another hour just in case, but they didn't show up. I was shaking when I got back in the car. Not from fear, just adrenaline, anger, vindication, maybe. On the drive back to Dayton, I kept replaying the moment they kissed. How easy it was for him. How completely untroubled he looked. Like Mom didn't exist. Like I didn't exist. Back at Aunt Karen's, I didn't go inside right away. I sat in the driveway, pulled up the clearest photo I had, Tom holding that woman's hand like they were high school sweethearts, and sent it to him with one sentence. "Guess who's watching?" He responded almost immediately. First it was, "Kyle, let's talk." Then, "Don't show her. Please. I'm begging you." Then, "I'll fix it. Whatever you want." I didn't answer. I just shut him down. Inside, Aunt Karen was folding laundry in the living room. She saw me come in and asked. So I showed her the photos. She stared at them for a minute, nodded once, then looked up and said, "We're going there tomorrow. This ends now." Which brings us to today. We're on our way to my mother's house, and this is where everything changes. It was exactly 10:02 a.m. when Aunt Karen and I pulled into the driveway. I remember the time because she checked her watch and said, "Right on time. Let's go blow up a liar's life." She said it flat, like she was walking into a staff meeting, not the house of the man who turned mine upside down. The house looked like it always had. Light gray siding chipped in places. Mom's rose bush by the front window, neatly trimmed as always. Nothing on the outside indicated that everything inside was about to fall apart. But I knew. We didn't ring the doorbell. Karen opened the door like she owned the place, which made sense considering she used to come here all the time before Tom showed up and made it weird for her. She walked in with the folder under her arm like a lawyer walking into court. I followed her into the living room. Tom was sitting in the recliner, TV on, half watching one of those home improvement shows, still wearing that disgusting beige hoodie, sweatpants, holding a coffee cup like he didn't care. He saw us and just blinked like his brain couldn't process what was happening. My mom was in the kitchen chopping onions for something. Ashley was upstairs. I could hear music coming faintly through her door. Tom stood up. That's when he knew something was wrong. He looked at me, then at Aunt Karen. He didn't say anything. Mom asked what was wrong, wiping her hands with a towel as she walked into the living room. She was wearing her usual Sunday hoodie and jeans, barefoot, relaxed, like it was just going to be a quiet day off. She wasn't expecting the folder. She wasn't expecting any of this. Karen handed her the manila folder without a word. No build-up, no speech, just handed it over. Mom opened it slowly, her fingers trembling a little. She looked at the first photo. Tom and the blonde woman holding hands in front of the hotel. She didn't react. Then the second photo, him kissing her. Then the third. The two of them walking into the hotel like they'd done it 100 times before. She looked at Tom. He immediately opened his mouth. "I can explain," he said. "Nothing." He continued. "It's not what it looks like. This woman, she's a friend. We talked. That's all. I didn't want to upset you, so I didn't say anything. But Kyle, he's blowing this way out of proportion. He's trying to come between us." Karen rolled her eyes. Mom still didn't say anything. Then Ashley came halfway down the stairs. She must have heard the raised voices. She had her cell phone in one hand and an energy drink in the other. She looked at the folder in Mom's hand and jumped right in. "What's going on now? Did Kyle make something up again?" Tom snapped his fingers at her like a dog and told her to go back upstairs. She didn't move. Mom looked up at Tom and asked the question, "How long?" He hesitated. "Too long." Then she asked again, louder, "How long?" Tom began to fumble. "Just a few weeks. Maybe a month. I didn't mean for it to happen. We were just talking and—" Aunt Karen interrupted. "You were just talking when Kyle saw you sticking your tongue down her throat at a hotel in Springfield?" Ashley immediately jumped to his defense. "So what? He made one mistake and everyone is attacking him like he's a monster. You're all crazy." That's when Tom completely lost it. He pointed at me and started yelling. "You think you're a man now, huh? You think you've got it all figured out? You don't know anything about relationships. You don't know what it's like to actually be responsible." I didn't say anything. I just stood there and watched him go off like a malfunctioning robot. Then Mom spoke calmly, coldly. "I want both of you out of my house." You could hear Ashley's energy drink hit the floor. Tom laughed. "You're not serious." "I'm dead serious," she said. "You and your daughter gone today." Ashley exploded. "You can't kick us out. This is our house too." "No, it's mine," Mom said. Then it was as if something inside Tom snapped. He went into full desperation mode. "You're going to ruin everything. We built a life here. We've made progress. You're going to throw it all away because of a few pictures? That kid hated me from the start." Mom didn't even flinch. She said she would file for divorce, that he had until the end of the day to pack up and leave, that she'd ignored too much for too long, and she wasn't going to do it anymore. Ashley stormed back upstairs crying and slammed her door so hard that the picture frame in the hallway fell off the wall. Tom turned to me, and I'd never seen that look in his eyes before. Like a cornered animal. For a second, I thought he was going to lunge at me, but then he just sat back down in the chair as if it was all too much. Aunt Karen went out to call her lawyer friend, and Mom went back into the kitchen as if she'd just taken out the garbage. It wasn't over yet, but for the first time in almost a year, I felt like maybe it would be soon. It all happened at once. After Mom told them to leave, the air in the house changed. For almost a year, it felt like someone else owned the place, like I was just borrowing space in a house that used to be mine. But now the power had shifted. You could feel it. Tom knew it too. He stood there frozen, as if he couldn't believe she meant it. But she did. "I want you both gone," she repeated. "Today." He didn't scream this time. He tried something else. He became quiet, almost calm, and walked toward her, saying her name as if it meant something. He tried to pretend that there was still something between them that he could lean on. "We've had our ups and downs," he said. "But this isn't who we are. Don't let Kyle, don't let anyone, come between us." He talked about rebuilding, about therapy, about not giving up. Then he tried to bring Ashley into it. "She's just a kid. You think this won't destroy her?" Mom just looked at him and said, "You destroyed her when you brought another woman into this and lied to both of us." He had nothing left after that. Ashley was upstairs all the time, pacing so loudly that the floor creaked with each step. She didn't come down unless someone made her. Aunt Karen went out on the porch to make a phone call, probably the lawyer again. And Tom just stood there, silently seething. I think deep down he believed he'd always find a way back in, that Mom would cave like she always had before. But not this time. Mom said, "You have 1 hour." That was it. No yelling, no back and forth. Tom stood there for a few seconds, then went upstairs. We heard drawers opening, closet doors slamming, Ashley yelling something about how she wasn't going anywhere and how this wasn't fair. She called Mom a psycho at least twice, yelled that I was a lying freak, and then slammed her door. I stayed downstairs. So did Mom. Neither of us moved. We just waited. About 45 minutes later, Tom came down with a big black duffel bag slung over one shoulder. Ashley followed, dragging a huge rolling suitcase behind her. Her face red and swollen as if she'd been crying all the time. She didn't look at me, didn't even look at Mom. Tom said, "We'll be back for the rest." Mom didn't answer. Aunt Karen had come back inside by then and was standing by the front door with her arms crossed. It was clear this was not a request. If they came back without permission, it wouldn't be quiet. Tom didn't have his car. He'd let Ashley drive it a few weeks ago and she crashed into a mailbox. It was still in the shop, so he called someone. We didn't know who until a beat-up silver pickup pulled into the driveway. Some guy I didn't recognize got out. One of Tom's friends, I guess. Bald, sunglasses. Didn't even make eye contact. He just helped them throw the bags in the back of the truck. Ashley stopped before getting in. She turned to the house and yelled, "This isn't over." Then she slammed the door. Tom didn't say anything. He got in and the truck pulled away. And just like that, they were gone. Mom didn't cry. She didn't say anything for a long time. She just stood in the kitchen staring at the counter. Aunt Karen went to the sink and poured herself a glass of water as if we'd just finished a long meeting. The house was quiet again. No yelling, no orders, no drama. Just silence. The kind of silence I hadn't heard in this house in a long time. It stayed quiet for a while after they left. There were no sounds from upstairs. No footsteps walking heavy like Tom used to do when he wanted everyone to know he was pissed. No loud music from Ashley's room. Just the occasional sound of the wind brushing against the house and the fridge humming in the background. Mom stayed in the kitchen. Same spot. She hadn't moved much since they walked out the door. Aunt Karen sat at the table sipping water, watching her without pushing. I sat on the couch, unsure if I should say anything or if this was one of those moments where silence said more than words ever could. Then Mom finally spoke. "I found perfume in our car last month." She didn't look at anyone, just said it. It wasn't mine. I told myself it was maybe a coworker's or Ashley's. Then I found a receipt from that hotel in Springfield, and he told me it was from a friend who needed a ride out there. And I believed it. Not really, but I pretended to. Aunt Karen asked why. Mom didn't answer right away. Then she sat down at the table, finally looked over at me. "When he told me to let you go, I hated it. I knew it was wrong. But I told myself it was just temporary, that you'd be back. And when you weren't, I didn't stop him. I didn't defend you." She wiped her eyes. "I'm so sorry, Kyle." I nodded. I didn't know what to say at first. I'd been waiting to hear that for months. But now that I heard it, it didn't hit me the way I thought it would. It wasn't anger anymore. It was just tiredness. Like I'd been holding on to something heavy and didn't realize how long I'd been carrying it. Then she said, "I stayed with him because I was afraid. I thought no one else would want me. Not with a teenage son. Not with all the baggage. I was just so tired of being alone." Aunt Karen leaned forward, both hands on the table. "Being alone is a hell of a lot better than living with someone who makes you feel invisible." Mom laughed through her nose. A small, dry sound. "I know that now." I got up and sat at the table, too. "You're not alone. Not anymore." She looked at me and I saw something in her face I hadn't seen in months. Relief. Like she finally let herself believe that she didn't have to keep pretending everything was fine just to avoid feeling abandoned. That night, we didn't talk much more about it. We were all tired in a different kind of way, the kind that settles into your bones after something heavy finally leaves your life. We ordered Chinese from the place on Main Street, same place we used to get from before Tom ever showed up. Mom got her usual orange chicken with extra rice. Karen went for General Tso's, and I just got dumplings and lo mein. We ate in the living room, boxes open on the coffee table, legs tucked under blankets, some dumb movie playing in the background. No one raised their voice. No one had to fight for space or attention. We just sat there together and, for the first time in almost a year, it felt like home again. Update, 10 days later. Hey, it's Kyle again. It's been 10 days since everything went down. And honestly, it feels like a completely different world now. I figured I'd post an update since a few people have been asking what happened next. And yes, a lot has happened. 3 days after Tom and Ashley were kicked out, he showed up again in the middle of the afternoon. Just like that, same old rusty pickup. His buddy drove the first time. I recognized the guy. Looked like he hadn't shaved or changed in days. They parked in front of the house and stood around like they were expecting someone to roll out a welcome mat. Mom didn't open the door. She didn't even talk to him. She'd already packed every one of their things. Boxes labeled, taped shut, everything neatly stacked in the garage, waiting for pickup. She had security cameras installed the day after they left. She wasn't taking any chances. She called her lawyer before they even stepped on the porch. They didn't knock this time. They just walked back and forth from the garage to the truck, loading everything. Clothes, makeup bags, a stupid gaming chair that Ashley refused to leave behind. Everything that belonged to them, gone in less than an hour. When Tom left, he paused on the lawn as if he thought she'd changed her mind. Like she'd run out crying, apologizing, asking him to stay. That didn't happen. What did happen was this. She sent him $50 via Venmo and immediately blocked him. That was it. $50. She literally marked it tip. I asked her why she did that and she just said, "I'm not heartless. Just done." And she meant it. Totally done. That night, she closed every account he had access to, joint cards, joint bills, everything. Turns out she'd been slowly cutting him out of her finances for weeks before any of this happened. It was as if she knew deep down where this was going, even if she wasn't ready to admit it. The divorce filed the next morning. Her lawyer wasted no time. And the thing is, since Tom had basically brought nothing to the marriage, no income, no assets, it moved quickly. He tried to stall, claimed he didn't want a divorce, that they could work it out, but it was too late for all that. My mother had already emotionally walked out weeks before the paperwork even hit the desk. It was finalized almost immediately. Fastest process I've ever seen. He left with nothing. No car, no house, no money. Ashley too. She didn't even contact my mom. I guess she figured out pretty quick that the good life she was sucking off wasn't coming back. As for me, I am back home now. I've got my room back, the key to the house, and the freedom to exist again without tiptoeing around like a guest. It's strange in a good way, like walking into the same place, but finding that someone has repainted the walls and turned down the volume on all the chaos. Even my mom seems different now. Quieter at times, yes, but more present. Like she's finally seeing her own life for what it is, not what she's trying to make it be. She's cooking again. Nothing fancy, just little things. Breakfast without tension. Late-night coffee without someone accusing her of being wasteful. Things like that. And Karen has been here almost every day since, bringing groceries, watching movies with us, just hanging out. You can tell she's trying to help Mom fill the space that used to be soaked with Tom's presence. I've never seen her so protective. I think she blames herself a little bit for not stepping in sooner. But honestly, I think she showed up at exactly the time we needed her most. Mom told me 2 nights ago that she still wakes up expecting to hear him stomping around or Ashley playing music. But then she remembers she doesn't have to live like that anymore. She can exhale. She can take up space in her own home. And that's what we did. Living, resting, laughing sometimes, trying to forget the past, or at least learn to carry it without letting it crush us. Last night, we ordered Chinese again, the same place we used to go when life was simple. Lo mein, orange chicken, egg rolls, the works. We ate it in the living room with the plates on our laps and a movie playing in the background, just like we used to. Felt normal. Felt like home. Thanks to everyone who followed this whole thing. I didn't expect so many strangers to care. But you did. And that helped more than I thought. We're okay now. Better than okay, actually. We are finally free. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.